Good morning. I'm John Colmo. Once again, pleased to have the opportunity to chair this meeting of the NYPA trustees and Canal Corporation board. Sunny and bright day in White Plains, as it is, I think, elsewhere across our wonderful state of New York. With me here in the boardroom is B. Gonzalez, Lewis Warren, Michael Cusick, Cecily Morris, and Lori Wheelock, and joining us remotely is Dennis Trainer. So thank everyone for making and taking the time to be with us. Justin and some of his team are present at the moment, and the expanded group will join us a little bit later in the meeting. As always, this session's been duly noticed as required by open meetings law, and with that, I'm pleased to call this session to order. If anyone has any amendments to the agenda as otherwise presented, happy to entertain those. If not, I'd ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. B, thank you. Motion. Second. Lewis, thank you very much. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Agenda has been adopted. We've all had the opportunity to review the contractors list to ensure no conflicts. Unless there's any late breaking changes in the notifications you've given, we'll move forward. We have a full agenda again today, and good discussions to kick off and table set and launch us into 2024. But before we do that, as we typically do, I want to spend a little bit of time in executive session, and so I'd ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to Section 105 of the Public Officers Law. Thank you, Lori. Second.
Second.
Thanks very much, Cecily. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. We'll be back in what I'm sure is no more than an hour. Thank you very much, and we'll see you shortly. Welcome back, everyone. If I could, I'd ask for a motion to resume the meeting in open session. Motion. Thank you, Michael. Second, Lori. Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any? We're back in session, and as always, reaffirm that no votes were taken during the executive session. Except before we adjourn, full agenda, really a table setting agenda as we look ahead into 24 and all that's on our plate, opportunities, challenges, responsibilities, a lot of excitement and anticipation among us as a board, and I know across the organization. We're excited to see what comes and excited to continue the charge in pursuit of better days ahead. So Justin will kick us off with a bit of an overview, and then we'll pivot. Joe, Adam, Alexis, and her team will spend some good time on the risk side, and we'll go from there. Joe.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Trustees, members of the NYPA staff, members of the public. So great to be with you here today on our first board meeting of 2024. Right at the top, I'd like to introduce to the board and to the management team who hasn't met him and the public, our new Senior Vice President of Communications and External Affairs, Charles Immohisen. Charles, stand up and
okay,
and wave. Thank you. Charles brings an impressive and diverse background of operational and legal experience across public and private sectors, including in the energy space. He served in senior roles in the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the White House Hurricane Sandy Rebuilding Task Force, and at our own Empire State Development. And he's going to be responsible for developing, leading, and directing NYPA's internal and external engagement strategy to actually build and maintain relationships with government officials and communities across the state, which, as we know, is so important to our success. Additionally, Charles will lead the development and implementation of strategies to ensure that NYPA's story, that our message, that our narration and reputation management support our mission, vision, and values and strategy with the goal of achieving positive responses among external and internal constituents. One other thing I'd like to add that we've seen in our agenda today, but just to highlight, we'll be hearing from our new Chief Risk and Resilience Officer, Alexis Harley, who joined us several months ago. And Alexis will be doing a deep dive into our entire risk and resilience activities. Typically, some of this material is, as you know, treated at and considered at our committee meetings. But in this instance, we wanted to set the table early in 2024 on the emphasis on risk, how important risk and resilience is to our overall operations and, of course, our success. So with that, I'd like to turn to a few things that are happening in the energy space and in New York State. So as I think we all know, Governor Hochul on January 9 presented her 2024 State of the State address. And as I think we all know here at NYPA, we remain fundamentally aligned with her energy and environmental agenda. Tomorrow, as many of you know, I'll testify before the joint legislative budget hearings on the 2024 environmental conservation budget, as I did last year. And I think the message is we have a lot to be proud of here at NYPA. We're leaning in support of the state's transition to a clean energy economy, and we're proud of the contribution that we have made in the past and that we will make in the future. Also, a lot of work going on at Canals, and I'm excited to share some of the details with the members of the Senate and the Assembly tomorrow. Pay attention, it'll be a long day.
For us or for you or all the above?
Well, certainly for me, but
Okay.
and many others.
Well, I can tell you're very excited and looking forward to it.
I am.
All right.
Okay.
It's your Super Bowl, right?
That's right.
It's Super Bowl week and you're kicking it off.
That's right.
All right. I
All
like it.
right.
I like it.
Yeah. Tailgating has already begun.
All right.
So as we look at the budget, a couple of things that came out of our State of the State and the budget, a couple of things that came out of it that are of interest to us, I think. The key themes this
Socks.
year.
That's pretty good. I like that. Socks.
Yeah. The
State of the state.
That's
Okay,
right.
socks.
The key thing this year, the key themes, I should say, were energy affordability and continue to be energy affordability and resiliency and preparedness. Of course, those two themes are right up our alley here at NYPA. And a few actual specific initiatives that I want to just bring to the board's attention. So one is what they're calling the Renewable Action Through Project Interconnection and Deployment, or RAPID Act. This will create a one-stop shop for project siting for both renewable energy and transmission facilities. That'll be housed at the Office of Renewable Energy and Siting, or ORES, at DPS, making it the one place or one-stop shop for both. And the idea here is to really make permitting, make the whole process faster and more streamlined. So our view, certainly as a owner and operator of generation and transmission and an entity that's going to be looking to build projects here, anything that speeds up that process is something very, very much key to our success and something that we're fully supportive of. So that's one item. The other is the Grid of the Future proceeding, which DPS will launch. And the idea here is by the end of the year, they'll develop a plan for investments that build out a truly affordable, resilient, and clean grid. And of course, this, as the largest owner and operator of the bulk transmission system in the state, this is critical to our success and something that we bring obviously a lot of expertise to in terms of the state's execution. So this will have significant implications as to NYPA's role in the future energy system, and we'll partner closely with DPS to align their plan with our NYPA Renewables Strategic Plan, which, as you know, is due at the end of January 2025. And then finally, statewide Solar for All is an innovative program that's going to combine two existing successful state programs: the Utility Managed Energy Affordability Program and the Community Solar Program will be combined. And the idea there is to efficiently deliver clean energy savings to low-income households. And this new program can deliver an electric bill credit of up to $40 per year to more than 800,000 households. And NYPA aims to align the state Solar for All program with our own REACH program that we've talked about with you, that came out of last year's budget initiative that we're launching, and that we just recently filed our petition with the PSC just earlier this week. develop or have the PSC develop the guidelines around how that project will be launched and how those bill credits will be delivered to communities. Looking now at the core themes of the energy policy agenda for 2024, energy affordability and resilience. Energy affordability obviously is at the heart of NYPA. The New York grid, both today and in the fully renewable future, will rely to a large extent on NYPA's low-cost hydropower assets. So that's why we continue to fund projects like Next Gen Niagara to make sure that that sort of foundation of the new renewable future will still be effective and actually more efficient coming out of some of those projects that we're developing. We're also supporting affordability of New York's energy system through our own investments in transmission, which in some ways sounds counterintuitive, but that spending on transmission ultimately produces ratepayer benefits because those projects are relieving congestion on the system. So just recently we energized, a good example is the energization just a couple weeks ago of our Central East Energy Connect project, which was specifically designed to relieve congestion in that most congested area on the entire grid in the state, Central East piece of the grid, up in the sort of east of Utica over toward Albany section of the grid. So that'll produce direct ratepayer benefits through less congestion on the system. With respect to resilience and preparedness, this is another area where NYPA's generation and transmission serves as a foundation of the 21st century grid, and our investments in those assets protect them for future generations of New Yorkers. In addition to our current assets, NYPA is also investing, as we all know, in energy storage, both on the bulk system side through our North Country Energy Storage Project, the 20 megawatt battery that we just put online, which is the first state-owned bulk battery on the system, and also at our customer sites. Finally, before I get into our regular expanded authority update, I wanted to share some exciting news from this year's budget around the canal system. We're very excited and grateful to the governor for proposing $50 million to be included in the state budget for canals infrastructure. And as you know, and as we saw when we were up in that area back in September for our board meeting, the canal does have significant infrastructure needs. And as we all know, we've increased our contribution to the canal system up to the current $140 million plus in annual expenditures, but there's still work to be done. And we see that it's tough to keep up with the work that the canal system requires in order to keep it safe for the next 100 years. As you know, it will be celebrating its 200th anniversary next year, bicentennial, with the World Canals Conference being held in Buffalo next year. And it's a great time for us to be focusing on the next 100 years and keeping it safe and secure for the communities that rely upon it along the canal system as we go forward. So with that, I'd like to move over to our expanded authority update and walk through some of the progress on each of our task forces that we've created to drive execution toward the goals that have been set for us and the timeline that's been laid out in the statute. First and foremost, on the NYPA renewable side, as we have talked to you about, we're actively seeking land, both state land and other land that we might be able to take options on in order to preserve our optionality and ability to build projects once we've completed the strategic planning process this year. And just recently, we issued an RFI for private sector interest to understand just what potential partnerships or collaborations might be available to us with the private sector. And I'm excited to tell you that we received over 100 inquiries from the private sector, and I think close to 40 submissions on ideas that NYPA might be able to pursue with the private sector in this area, ultimately hoping to be able to build more if we can partner with the private sector and actually deliver on the charge that's been given to us by the legislature and the governor, which we're fully embracing and hard at work at.
So further evidence of that strong level of interest and support from the private sector, opportunities for us to collaborate, joint venture, partner, whatever.
Correct.
Great.
Yep. Moving on to the REACH program, as I think I mentioned to you last week, we wanted to make sure that we got that petition into the Public Service Commission well in advance of the deadline that's called for in the legislation. So roughly 3 months early, we filed a petition with the PSC just recently to establish the guardrails around the REACH program. So if you recall, REACH requires the bill credits to the disadvantaged communities to be sort of sleeved through the local utility bill. So that's very much within the purview of the Public Service Commission as to how that
Sleeved through, translate
says
that.
essentially that revenues that we produce from the REACH projects will ultimately make their way to the utilities to be credited to the bills of the disadvantaged communities. So that infrastructure around that and how that all works is something that the Public Service Commission, as the regulator of these utilities like the Con Eds and the national grids, will have to establish. So that's now before the commission. I'm sure there'll be comments coming in, and we'll be participating, obviously, very aggressively and closely watching how that comes out. But that was a big milestone.
For what comes out?
So I don't think the commission has any deadline within which to act, but typically these things, maybe Lori has a better answer, having been a litigator there, but I think, between 60 and 90 days after all the papers are in, you typically will receive an order.
I'm pretty sure it's going to follow the State Administrative Procedure Act. And so I'm sure Lori could send us those timelines, but it's in early, which is really good. And then the comment periods will open, which is exciting.
So we'll be watching that, but that was an important milestone for us that we need to, we needed to obviously move on quickly, and I'm happy to say that the team did that, and we'll be working closely on watching that closely and working on that. On the peaker decarbonization piece of the new renewable legislation, we've been working internally on trying to identify what
Define peakers, make sure the
Peakers,
audience,
yeah,
the full
so-
audience understands.
Yeah, so these are the plants that were designed to run on those hottest days when the system needs additional capacity in order to meet an increase in energy usage or load. So we were asked in 2001 to build 11 peaking sites because they were anticipating, the NYSO and Con Ed was, a shortage in the coming year. So we built 11 peaker plants at 6 different sites in a 1-year period in order to make sure that the grid was stable the following year. So those plants are continuing operation, but as I think we've talked to you about in the legislation from last year, the expanded authority bill calls for us to retire those plants by 2030, subject to reliability or emissions, increase in emissions by their closure. But we're working on trying to identify which plants are the likely candidates for early closure. So we had an RFP out on the street, you may recall, for battery storage ideas around potential connection to offshore wind development. But and so we were waiting on the NYSERDA solicitations to see if any of those projects got selected that included our peaker storage capability, but none of those projects got selected. So once we learned what NYSERDA's decision was, we went back to the developers and said, let's see, first of all, is your pricing still good? It's been some time, so confirm that. And so now we're starting to negotiate with them around what potential sites might be candidates for battery storage and be able to be retired potentially before 2030. So we've launched negotiations with several of the sites. And as I think I've talked to you before, this is not the kind of thing where all of them have to be retired at the same time. There are some that are less needed for by the Con Ed system. There are also obviously new resources that are going to be coming in. If you think about the Champlain Hudson Power Express line coming into New York City, that'll be an additional piece of capacity that'll be on the system, offshore wind, before the end of the decade. So all those things coming together, energy efficiency, demand response, virtual power plants, all these things coming together, hopefully will enable us to retire these plants sooner than the 2030, 2030 date. But certainly 2030 is
So
the
for us,
goal.
it's more about alternative utilization than the shutdown and, taking them isn't really the issue. It's what else can we do? how do we best optimize the resource and the facility?
Right. And I think that to the extent that they can be replaced by battery storage technology makes the case for retiring the fossil generation there easier to make. So obviously a lot of R&D around battery technologies going on to try to increase the capacity of battery storage at the site. So we're fully engaged on that, and we're happy to be working toward entering into agreements with these battery technology or battery storage entities. On the decarbonization piece, which was another separate bill, we call it DL 15 now. This is the legislation that called for us to develop energy master plans for 15 of the largest state emitting facilities. So this is also a charge given to us coming out of last year's budget, signed by the governor and now law. So we're hard at work with all of the entities that are on that list that we're working with. The idea here is that we develop and pay for energy master plans for these facilities that'll give them the ability to see, a pathway forward for the decarbonization of their sites. So what we have authorizations to proceed with all the customer work, which we executed in December. It was just this past December, and we'll have all of our customer kickoffs with the 15 sites completed by mid-February. And I'm happy to say we had a very robust contractor response to support the plan development. And because not every company has the sophistication to go into large facilities like state office complexes or college campuses or correctional facilities and be able to do this type of analysis. So we have a number of companies that have indicated interest in working with us. So we'll be choosing those contractors at the end of February.
And then Justin, sorry. So we developed the master plans in concert with these 15 top
Correct.
carbon users. And then what's the next step for those? We deliver the master plan.
So we deliver the master plan, and then it becomes a budgeting item for the customer, and some of these things would have to be just because of some of the magnitude of the work, some of these things would have to be done in phases. But then we begin a discussion around, sequencing and phasing in the work that needs to be done. And we'll work closely with them on, prioritizing that work. And, but that'll be very much a follow-on discussion with the agencies affected.
Yeah, and these are big universities. These are
correct. It's the state, it's college campuses, it's correctional facilities, OGS and others. But we're working closely with all of them, and I think we're really adding value to the state's decarbonization efforts. And the idea obviously here is the state should lead by example, right? We've got to be working on decarbonizing our own activities, and that's what this is all about.
That's fabulous. Thank you.
And then the final piece on the workforce training side, as you recall, last year's budget calls for up to $25 million to be contributed annually by NYPA for workforce training. This is around the transition of the clean energy work, the transition of today's workforce to the clean energy workforce of the future, and NYPA enabling that, both our own workforce and externally. As you know, we're already very active in this area through our Northland Workforce Training Center in Buffalo, our PTech internship program, and our support of the NYCHA Clean Energy Academy. Continue to do all that work. That's been part of our mission and part of our work. But what we're looking to do is really accelerate and amplify that through this additional $25 million. And we're working currently with the Department of Labor on an MOU as to how we'll collaborate together with DOL to bring our expertise in the energy industry to development of programs and services with DOL for the benefit of this transition to the clean energy workforce of the future. So a lot going on the expanded authority. Several work groups here. It is our primary focus right now. We have a core business here that we tend to in terms of
which at least top of mind focus.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, our core business is generating and transmitting electricity and keeping the lights on for New Yorkers and providing the economic development tools that we bring to bear. But this is a new, obviously new endeavor for us and a top of mind focus for the organization. So want to thank the board.
Any concerns that you have as we're leaning in and pursuing anything more that you think is needed to ensure we can attack this as aggressively and assertively as we need to?
No, I think we've done a really good job of creating the internal framework for the launch of this new business line, if you will.
Right.
Whether through hiring or reassignment of existing workforce, but I think we're well positioned internally. And obviously, just through the RFI that I mentioned, I think there's significant interest in the private sector to partner with us, and there's no question that we'll play a significant role. One of the things that came out of the conferral process that we wrapped up last year was, I think a feeling across the board that there is a role for NYPA, and NYPA should play a role in helping the state accelerate its progress toward the goals.
And playing off that, what do you think the collective understanding is publicly of our role and opportunity and right organization to do that 6 months later? Noise consternation of 6 months ago. How has that evolved, come 1st of February from your seat, and what you're hearing and seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that will come out in the strategic plan that we'll wrap up and we'll bring to you at the end of the year, and then file in January when people actually can see what projects we're looking to kick off with. I mean, this is going to be a long-term exercise. This is something we're going to do for a few years. This is going to be until the state gets to where we want to get to. I think we're going to be fully engaged. But I think, people, it's obviously it always depends on who you ask, but I think the consensus is that NYPA is a trusted professional organization that's stepped up historically in the past to do big things for the state. And I think that we certainly think internally that, as I've said before many times, is very much in our DNA, stepping in and doing big things. And nobody's better positioned to do that than the Power Authority.
Okay, great. Questions for Justin on any of that, Lori?
Yeah, so just to Justin, and thank you. With the RFI, that's really exciting to hear how many points of interest there were, how many submissions. Can you talk a little bit more granular about next steps, the review process, and that? I think that'd be interesting. And then I have one quick comment on the canals.
Yeah, I think on the RFI, I mean, I think, and this, we're still in the process here. So, and I certainly haven't been briefed on what those proposals look like, but I think there'll be a significant vetting of, once that closes up, we'll be vetting the ideas we got and see how they kind of square with the work that we've already done, both through Vanello's work on internally and some of the consulting engagements we've had to help us sort of develop the operating model and the framework and the type of projects where we really think we might be able to, lean in and fill a gap or bring our unique skill set to the table. So I think more to come on that. I'd like to defer on that if I could until after that wraps up.
At this point, right?
Yeah,
We're not
until that wraps up.
Fitting in all the pieces.
Right. So
Yeah.
when we get fully briefed on what we received, other than the numbers, I'll be happy to come back to you.
more fully understand where we're going and how we're going to attack it. So
Yeah, no, it's good. It's like, again, filling in all the different pieces to this complex puzzle. So it's
Yes.
exciting. Also exciting though is the canals news. And so for the whole team and all of NYPA, having money in the budget is just, it's a phenomenal step. And so, someone who knows the budget process, just because it's in there, now we have to fight to keep it in there and to grow from it. So just, again, really excited to see that. And, whatever you need from the board, we support that. So thank you.
Thank you. As you know, it was a year of advocacy, and it was a cross-functional effort here. Just educating people about how great an asset is for this, it is for the state, and how important it is to keep it safe and secure for the benefit of New Yorkers. And we've obviously been working on what we'll do with that money. So we've got projects that we've identified, obviously, to be able to present if there's questions around, well, just what are you going to spend that $50 million? And we'll have no trouble coming up with projects.
We're gonna have no trouble because we have a multiple of that 50 in terms of need. As I recall, when we
Right.
visited the lock, I mean, the rehab on one lock was
20,
I
I think.
was gonna say, I thought it
20
was
or
30
29.
$30+ million, et cetera. I mean, so 50 is significant. I agree. It's an important first step, but
Yep.
it's one of those, for a small step, it's, the needs are significant and substantial and certainly create significant demand on us and our resources as well. So it needs to be, more and more of a partnership with the state to really effectively rehabilitate the system, in an appropriate way.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Justin.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up, who we got Joe Kessler on the operations front. Razzle dazzle us, Joe. Let's go. All right.
Wow, asking operations to razzle dazzle.
Yeah, we need a little razzle dazzle. I mean, come on.
By the way, I thought football was over 2
Fire
weeks
us
ago.
up.
There's a football game this week. I thought it was over 2 weeks ago.
Fire us up.
Thank you, Chairman and board.
Adam's gonna be telling us, how well the finance team, so you gotta fill the gap here now,
I'll
okay?
do that. I'll do my best. Thanks. Thank you, Chairman, the board, members of the public and staff. For those who don't know me, Joe Kessler, Chief Operating Officer, New York Power Authority. I just want to kind
The
of
chief razzle dazzle.
the Chief Razzle Dazzle Officer. I got
Okay, here we
the
go.
CDRA. So I really want to just segue from kind of our last meeting. We talked about a lot of things that we had accomplished. And I want to look forward to this year. And you can go right to that slide, Harley. Thank you. The number one thing that we want to kind of like focus on and coming up in 24 is our asset management strategy. You may recall that if you harken back to our 2020 version of our strategy before 2030, we were looking at ways to incorporate our best practices of asset management and reliability center maintenance throughout our fleet. And when we did that, we discovered this publicly available standard PAS 55 that turned into, while we were doing this ISO 55001 way of looking at our assets. It resonated with us. It was a standard that was used by a lot of the Commonwealth nations to support large asset bases that, people think asset management a lot of times is financial, but in some of these organizations, it's large physical assets like we have. So we leveraged that standard, and there were 39 key areas that we looked at and figured out that, wow, we're pretty good at a lot of these things. If we put it all together, let's take a run at certification. And we were the first utility in North America to get this certification back then. And we have twice since been audited in that standard and have passed those with flying colors. And we're continuing working with Angela's group, internal audits as well, to make sure we do that. The next step, though, is that's kind of like the price of admission to get that certification, is to shift into the next gear and think about ways using, what we know now about, if you think about back then, we were doing a lot of investment in our own assets, Niagara Power Project, transmission life extension, those kinds of things. Well, we're doing a heck of a lot more than that with canals now. We're doing a lot with the development organization on transmission, and now hopefully new renewables and other assets and things like that. So we're trying to shift in the next year to make sure that's as seamless as possible. So this year, we're going to take our time after working with Phil Toya's group in development and some of the other risk areas to focus on key parts of those 39 strategies and think about going into the next year of those. So you're going to be hearing a lot more with that. The whole idea is to be continually improving in this process. We're never satisfied in operations that what we're doing is good enough. So we're always looking for the next level. So that's what you'll see from us going into next year. And this will fit seamlessly with Vision 2030 and the expanded authority. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we came out of Vision 2030 with was probably the primary thing was really optimizing and enhancing the value of our hydro plants. And you're seeing a lot of resolution on this slide here, but really what you're looking at is some of the output that we did from those investments when we did Vision 2020 into 2030 around the integrated smart operating system and PI, which is a software that we use to merge a lot of data that we couldn't really see together well before. And that has given us additional insights and visualization around how these units can, especially the large hydro units, which are largely one-off units. There's not too many in common with each other. So understanding what operating range they can have, how much we can swing, and basically, the New York ISO has found that these are very useful tools to kind of, use more robustly rather than say run of the river. And that's important to us because the newer resources that are coming are less dispatchable or not dispatchable. You know, solar and wind, they're available and they're on when they're on. This allows the hydro plants to make up that balance, but to do that, we need to widen their operating range or understand where maybe we can widen it just on the way we're doing it today. A lot of these calculations back when these plants were built were in slide rules. Nowadays, we got a lot of sophisticated tools. Maybe we can widen that range. We have found that we have been able to do that in Niagara. What you're seeing here are some sensors that we put on, some sensor deployment that we put on our Robert Moses Unit 13 in Niagara. And with that, those tests and running it up and down, we found out we can widen the operating range about 18%, which is going to be helpful as we go forward. So those insights are gained by some of the this pie visualization that we have. It's a tough word for me. But, you know, managing water effectively and optimally is key for us on these hydro plants, and just making sure we're widening that and not damaging the equipment, or in other ways, trying to enumerate what the value is to the equipment if it does degrade faster, if we do operate this way, and making sure we're capturing that value. So that's what these tools will do for us. Next slide, please.
How are we doing?
We're doing good. If you know, Next Gen Niagara, we just got started, right? So we've got the control systems in place. So we're just learning. We're just hitting. This was the first unit that we ran these tests on. And our rules of thumb that our forefathers came up with back in the day on how to do this were about right. Back in when we did upgrades on the unit, there was this notion that you can get about 200 more megawatts of generation out of Niagara. And one of the thoughts they had was to build another unit at Niagara. This is back in the early 90s. Instead of doing that, they modified the existing 13 units to have more capacity with cooling, some new turbine wheels. So a lot of that is untested as far as how we ramp. We actually, for deregulation, we ramp significantly more. But now with all the renewables online and these undispatchable resources, daily, the Niagara can run what we call in the hole, almost in negative territory in terms of generation. It could actually be a load if it needs to be, all the way up to 2,760 megawatts for 4 hours, and anywhere in between throughout the day to balance that. So that's what we're trying to manage with all those things. And with 13 units, it's a challenge to determine, like, when is 7 units enough, 8 units enough, and where are you operating each of those units to do that. So these algorithms are all going to be built based on this data, and then hopefully preserve the value of that equipment.
And Joe, just for my education, so how many units would run on a typical day at Niagara? Half of those 13?
Yeah, I think, if I wouldn't say half, I'd say probably 7 or 8 or 9 in a shoulder month, all 13 in the summer. And then and if there's like a polar vortex or things like that, they'll all 13 will run, and the 12 units or whatever's available, because sometimes there's some on and actually, I kind of take that back. We only need 12 units to use all the water we need at Robert Moses. So we can do it with 12 units, and often we have one out on maintenance anyway, because they do once every 4 years. If you do a unit over 13, there's always typically one out on maintenance anyway. So that allows us to have some flexibility there as well.
So we're running at capacity, what percentage of the time?
I don't have a number in mind, but it's pretty much all summer long. Pretty much from, I would say like July 4th weekend to Labor Day, and even beyond Labor Day these days. We have some peaks. So
okay, so a third of the year.
Yeah, a third of the year. And then again, if we have polar vortices, another time they do it is if there's storms coming through, the New York ISO will island the system, and Niagara will ramp up because of that as well. Because now they're saying, okay, all that generation is going right here. You guys take care of your zone, so they separate the zones, and so those opportunities, it runs at capacity as well. You may recall that in the unmanned aircraft system, the UAS system here in last year, we have the 5-year drone program. All's going very well here. We have a very robust platform these days on mission management. That's what we're trying to do. We learned a lot in this area, kind of storytelling here, but back in 2017, we were dispatched to support Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. And at that time, we had drones, but they were these monster drones that we're using for R&D and just trying to determine what payload that we have for those drones. What we learned there is you just need a really good picture. And, DEC came with some of their officers and supported us in that dispatch. And they were DEC officers with drones, and they had great pictures of the dams and infrastructure. And we learned a lot that once you have that good digital image, you can do a lot with it. Since then, for example, in 2023, we've had over 756 drone missions on our own assets. It's become the way we do business in terms of inspecting and watching our system. And with that comes a lot of training. We have the drone pilots all have what I'll call day jobs. They're dispatched from different parts of our there could be a chief mechanic on one day, and then drone operator, an ENR technician, drone operator. And we've trained a number of folks to do that. And that certification and that management process, our own Peter Klatsidis and others have really done a lot to get that more robust. So the next step is to, we have this FAA approval for operations. It's a waiver to work outside of our visual line of sight. They call it, you'll hear BV loss a lot, it's beyond visual line of sight. We're using that to do inspections kind of automated with drones. That's the next step for us to do that. And we also realize this is going to be an ongoing effort. So it's important for us to make sure there's another generation of drone pilots coming in. So we're working very closely with STEM to make sure that we're doing outreach programs, which are very important. We've done 19 weeks of STEM in 2013. We've competed with some of these kids to operate drones. They're way better than us sometimes, so we don't always win, but we do learn a lot. So it's good to see what they're up to. So looking up ahead in 2024, the Media Hub platform is being built for data storage. It creates a lot of data, and Rob's team has been very helpful for us in terms of cloud storage and otherwise, and leveraging now, thinking about AI and machine learning, how we can leverage the information that we have to make more predictive moves on our assets. And as you know, as we get better at this, so do adversaries. So we also have to think about counter UAS programs and things, where somebody's maybe using things maliciously. How do we manage that as well? So working closely with Larry's team in security and IT again and cybersecurity, and our own drone program team to make sure that we're considering that as well as a risk.
We're not making Amazon deliveries.
We are not yet. No,
Okay.
Cannot deliver your electricity by drone yet. So
Okay.
next slide, please. So one of the things that we really focus on, and this really became apparent to us, I think more during COVID than any other, is the collegial nature of the industry itself, the energy industry, trying to figure out all these problems. This slide just represents, and it's we don't have to go through each of these key areas, but what it is just lists a number of agencies and organizations that we belong to, contribute to, and learn from in terms of trying to create research opportunities and understand our own assets. Like I said, I'll just use Hydropower Research Institute as an example, HRI, that's up there on the left there. Most of the hydro plants that we operate and they operate are one-off units. So it's hard to aggregate enough data to make good decisions about degradation of turbine wheels or other equipment. Here, we can anonymize data. We can get into special projects with other utilities in an anonymous way, and then leave it to the engineers to kind of figure out solutions for us. And all these organizations are things we're actively involved with that are going to leverage the technologies we need in the future around digitization. Again, AI, ML is going to be a big piece of it, and the drone program, but even just as organizations on asset management. So like MUG and CanMUG, those are maintenance groups, maintenance users groups, or maximal users groups. Those are organizations that we can share learnings with and kind of Chatham House rules and make sure that we're on the right track. And I would argue in many cases, we're leaders in these organizations. So it's been very effective for us. So that's just to let you know that we're going to continue to do that as well. Next Gen Niagara. Again, we talked about optimizing our hydro fleet. We have overhauled our controls upgrade and the mechanical electrical systems of Unit 6 that was initiated in 2023. It's got a 15-month construction period, and we welcome the trustees to stop by, take a look at where we are and all those things. We also have to do a bit of work on some of the ancillary equipment, so the cranes and other things as well. So the gantry crane has a capacity of over 630 tons, 700 tons it's tested at. You need that because the rotating equipment on a Niagara unit's over 600 tons. So just to take it apart, you need to have this capacity. If that crane goes down, you can't complete that work. So that's a big part of our capital improvement as well. So a contract award recommendation for the replacement of the stators is targeted in the March Finance Committee and trustee meetings. And the work associated with this contract includes the engineering, fabrication, and delivery of 5 new stators to replace the remaining original stators at Robert Moses. They have a life of about, that could be 30 years or so. So we're right there. We're at the tail end of that. It's odd to me because we were just putting in some new ones when I started, and here we are replacing some of those already. But so the first stator replacement will be initiated in about 2027. We're also fabricating a PennStat inspection platform. It's very difficult, 300 feet of a you know, the large tube to get in there and take a good hard look at it. We're also looking for ways to do that with, you know, unmanned craft and so forth, but often we have to get in there. So there's a platform that's needed to actually go down there. We've done that before. So every time we do it, it gets re-engineered with new safety standards, and we take a look at how to do that and make sure its platform is anchored properly and so forth. And I think that covers everything on Next Gen Niagara. Of course, a lot of work there. Transmission LEM is one of the capital programs we're more on the tail end of. So you can see a lot of completed tasks here for the switch yard. It continues to be in progress. We still have some things to do yet, mostly at the 765 kV yard in Messina, some of the 230 breakers at the Robert Moses Dam, and then Bay 26 breakers on what we call the Auto Bank or Auto Transformer 5 for Western New York. And station service switchgear, that's the control switchgear. That's the power that controls the breakers on and off and so forth. So that switchgear is getting updated in 2024. So those are some of the things that you'll see come before you as we get approvals and awards contracted. And I believe,
Joe,
yes, sir.
Any issue with this supply chain,
Yeah.
breakers, switches?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think our schedule incorporates everything that we know about it right now, but we're still there. You know, the large major equipment. You know, we're not the only ones developing energy projects in the world, right? Everybody's doing it. We're trying to all solve this decarbonization together. So there's always been limited manufacturers for these things to begin with, and they're feeling the strain as well. So we've actually, you know, had to pay close attention with our vendors. We work closely with John Canal and Strategic Supply Management on where we're slotted in these things, where maybe 2 slots should swap to make sure we're prioritizing our own work. And yeah, we're seeing it. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, we're seeing it. We're adapting to it. Our schedule includes it right now, and so far we're in pretty good shape. But there's some snags probably to overcome yet.
Is it improving though? You mean you see, what's the perspective on where we've been versus where we're going? What are expectations, impacts?
I think, you know, I wouldn't say the speed of delivery is improving. I think our expectations have matched it now. So we're able to, you know, optimize our portfolio to make sure we're taking advantage of whatever is available when it's available. But largely, we're still seeing the same constraints we discovered as we started ramping up. Not a lot has been resolved in those areas, especially the large, you know, equipment, the transformers, circuit breakers. And there's some other things that we're going to continue to watch as well. Like there's a lot of discussion around what we do with SF6 as a greenhouse gas. That's an insulating material that's used a lot for breakers and equipment that we use. There may be constraints on that going forward based on you know, some rules that may come up on that. So we're closely monitoring all that to make sure we're adapting as well. And that will be a particular issue in the Southeast region because you don't have the physical space to do air circuit breakers. What you're looking at on this picture here is, you know, 765 kV equipment. The insulator in these pictures is air. And the way you insulate it is by separating them. Well, you're not going to be able to do that in Long Island. If you have high voltage, you're going to have to do it another way. And SF6 is one insulating gas that they use for that. And there's some discussion about, you know, the future of SF6 right now. We're trying to pay close attention to that as well, because you know, the physical real estate is going to be an issue.
Anything else for Joe?
That's all. That's my report.
That's it for the razzle
That's
dazzle?
it. If you're not razzled and dazzled, I don't know what to tell you.
That's it. Reasonable razzle dazzle.
Reasonable? All right, I'll take reasonable.
Keep bringing it.
All right.
Keep bringing it.
Thank
All
you.
right. All right, good job, Joe. Thanks much.
Always learn something from him.
All right, Adam. No smoke and mirrors, just clarity. No smoke and mirrors, though.
Good morning, trustees, NYPA colleagues, members of the public. We're going to give an update on the financials. We covered a lot in the finance committee, mostly on the income statement. Want to show you just a snapshot look at our balance sheet. Go to next. So balance sheet remains very strong at the end of the year. Our cash position and liquidity is still very robust, is improved. And, you know, it's not on here is also all the available lines of credit and availability we have under our borrowing programs, but ample liquidity to meet our needs. Receivables are down. Some of this is reflecting lower energy prices. So it's more of a timing issue and just a lower dollar value of those receivables based on lower energy prices. Assets in service is a big increase. We'll talk a little bit more about it when we look at the capital spending program, but a lot of assets were placed into service last year, notably Seek, SmartPath, and the SmartPath Connect is still being constructed, but also represents an increase in assets. If you look back at our goals, when we started Vision 2030, we wanted to increase transmission investment somewhat 3 to 5 times its size. Well, as of right now, we've increased 2.5 times the size of our transmission footprint. So when we started, we had a net investment in transmission of just under $1 billion. Now we're sitting at 2.3 billion. So we've been making significant progress of putting transmission assets onto the books. Liabilities, continue to are down, as you can see. This is consolidated, so it shows NYPA and the SFP. But just on the NYPA side, we have our net equity has increased by the amount of our net income of $132 million, and our liabilities on the NYPA side are down based on the defeasance we did at the end of last year. So our debt to equity ratio on NYPA is lower, which is a good thing. It's positive view by the rating agencies. So on that front, all positive signs there. Any questions around the balance sheet issues?
And just to underscore, you led with our cash position being robust by design to meet the many demands on us. We're not in cash accumulation mode. We're in cash generation mode to support the many initiatives.
Absolutely. Between the reserves we're required to maintain under resolutions and our cash on hand for rating agency expectations, some of this cash is borrowed cash, right? So we just did a bond issue. So some of that cash is money that we actually borrowed, but all of that cash, as we showed in the budget discussion, is committed to financing our long-term capital plan. And that's what we use, combination of debt and funds generated from the operations to make up that amount. And we said we'll come back in future meetings, talk a little bit about capital capacity prioritization and things we're doing around that.
Yep.
So on a long-term view. Any other questions here? Okay. Just quickly, net income. Again, we showed this last meeting. This is just a comparison from 22 to 23. We did budget to actual 22 to 23. Obviously, we got to the same bottom line number, but the components were different. So in 22, we had extraordinary amount of energy revenue based on the price spikes that we saw, which were somewhat temporary based on the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And in 23, the story was higher interest rates, and we benefited from that based on our investment portfolio and additional income there. So we got to the same net result year over year, but the components were different. And obviously, we want to see the operating income stay steady and increase at a rate that is manageable to meet our plans. Any questions there? Okay, next slide. This is a capital performance. So comparing 23 to the plan, it was somewhat below plan by about 22%. Our average in any given year has always been a little bit around 17%. Last year was 11% lower than the plan. So that had some effect on this year because some money and progress got credited towards 22. That may have been in 23. So there was some shift there, and there's some other factors that led to it being a little bit below the plan this year. Some reclassifications, some delay in some projects that were done deliberately to push out things that were a lower priority, make room for more strategic initiatives and focus our attention there. But overall, was in the range of our historical performance. But we do want to continue to get better at meeting project completion according to plan. Some projects actually just came in under budget, which is a good thing. So I thought that was a good result. Some things were a little were delayed deliberately. So there are a lot of reasons for why there was a gap there, but we watch that very closely and we give you updates every meeting. On the real positive side, well, the big highlights there is we had a couple major projects get completed into service, as we mentioned before. Smart Path Seek, were both came in under budget. Y49 was completed. Our Zone D storage project also completed, put into service, and that will be one of the first projects that we're going to look to get IRA money from the investment tax credit. So we're in the process of putting together our application to file for that money. So those are some of the major highlights of the capital plan for 23. Also, on the energy services side, they did it, extraordinarily well in terms of being their plan at almost 95% to plan. So shows that, we're delivering our projects timely for our customers and, meeting their needs. So that was a terrific performance by the project delivery team on the CES projects. On the strategic supply management side, a lot of activity, right? Our bigger capital program, a lot more activity, a lot more procurements, RFPs, RFIs, RFQs, contract spend, POs, all of that bigger activity, up 7%, more events in our systems, 34%, up significantly. The amount we spend on New York State businesses remains stable. On the positive side, supplier diversity spend for MWBEs and service disabled veterans organizations were both up significantly. And also very important is that the spend that is done directly to those suppliers on a prime basis versus just being a subcontractor also up by 32% in both categories. Some of that is directly related to the outreach and work that John Canal and his team has been doing. They've held significantly more events in 23 than 22, and some first time ever events. We've done things for engineering and architecture, construction and information technology targeted events. And we're going to continue to do a lot of those outreach programs, looking for other ways to help the MWBE suppliers, whether it be using our OSIP to reduce the insurance requirements that in some cases are barriers to entry for those firms where they can't meet requirements on their own. We're also looking at a program to do prompt payment for these suppliers to get their money turned around quicker, because some of them are feeling cash constraints, especially with higher short-term borrowing interest rates. So trying to do everything we can to invigorate that part of our business to make sure that we're achieving our goals.
So just to digest this for a minute, so we're spending $1 billion on contracts, and more than half of that is going to New York State businesses. So 550, 600 million going to New York State businesses.
Yeah.
Based on the number of contracts, 5%, not dollars
Right.
spent.
What was that, John?
So number of contracts issued to
Awarded.
New York State companies.
Contract awards.
As a number, not a dollar.
Dollars spent. The 55%.
Got it. Okay.
Oh, that's good.
Because you could have one large transmission job with
Sure.
a Wisconsin company, $80 million, and it throws the whole metric out of whack. So we felt the better way of tracking it is the actual number of contracts issued. That's the 55%.
Versus dollars.
Okay. So what is the dollar? So that sounds like does that mean the dollars are less than
Yes.
55%?
Yeah.
Because of that. Okay. I'm trying to get in. So is that a high water mark? Is that something that we're trying to advance further? That's circumstantial driven in
No,
terms of?
It's definitely an effort to increase the number of New York companies we do business with.
Right.
And at the same time, try to grow the spend too, obviously.
Sure.
But the MWB spend of 136, it's probably about maybe 1/6 or so of our budget spent.
Okay. Well, 136 out of the billion.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just what else can we be doing? I know as we look at solicitations, you do, we're trying to do what we can to stimulate the reinvestment in New York State, and I applaud our efforts to do that. I'm just trying to wave the flag here a little bit more to ensure there's clarity what we're putting, back into the statewide economy and the impact that we're having and the opportunities that's creating. So,
Yeah, and I think next time we come back to you with this kind of a slide, we'll elaborate a little bit more on the effect of actual New York State small businesses, because
Right.
that's not in this number.
right. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so
great.
doing everything we can to sort of push it along. An initiative the governor announced that we're also waiting for is one of the big problems or areas here is some firms are maybe MWB certified by New York City, but not New York State or Port Authority or somebody in, in and around. So what we want to do is we're looking forward to a program she announced to do reciprocity. So for example, if somebody is approved for New York City, but hasn't been approved at New York State, you could utilize them and it would count towards meeting your goals. But that's something that we're, working with the governor's office and the people that run the program at ESDC to try to move that along, because that will also open up more opportunities.
Okay.
And, again, we're also, if we do find an MWB that's not certified, there's also a program where if we want to use them, we do talk to ESDC and they will put them on a fast track to get certified if they know that a participating agency is looking to do business and contract with them. So that's another thing we can be doing to, widen the field.
Excellent.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Anything
Thank
else
you.
for Adam? Again, great job, last year and big opportunities, obviously leveraging the balance sheet, literally and figuratively. So kudos on to you and the team for all of that. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. All right, as Justin said up front, we kind of look at, try to structure our board agendas in terms of strategy, operations, finance, and then risk management. So 4 key pillars that as a board, we focus our efforts and energies around. Alexis, new to the organization, she talked to us briefly last time. We originally had her and her team coming to Risk and Resilience Committee, but have chosen to present it here to full board and the broader audience to really set the table very well for 24 and go forward. Where we are on a spot basis today, we have a very robust and, as you'll see, significant enterprise-wide risk management program, a lot of tentacles, incredible intellectual capital. Thrilled to have Alexis on board now leading that as it continues to evolve. Obviously, for all the good work that we do, if we aren't managing our exposures, aren't navigating that risk and reward challenge on an ongoing basis, we're not optimizing outcomes. You can keep coming, Alexis. You can walk while I'm talking. So, yeah, we're going to take a deep dive, spend the next hour or so, working our way through all of this. Want it to be a conversation as much as a presentation. So as a board, ensure, we appropriately engage, but great opportunity to hear more of and where we are as we start a new year in terms of that risk management, oversight and enterprise-wide risk management review. With that, go to it, Alexis.
Wow. Well, thank you, Chairman, and hello, trustees and NYPA management and the public. I am so pleased we get to present this comprehensive overview to you all, and I hope it will set a basic foundation of understanding so that we can continue to advance the discussion through the year, both with the full board and of course with our Risk and Resiliency Committee. Hi, Cecily. Looking so forward to working with you. We have a packed agenda for this portion of the meeting, as the chairman has already pointed out. We're going to start giving a bit of context about our risk and resiliency approach. We're going to give you an update on our latest maturity assessment results. We're going to present a review of our year-end snapshots, both for NYPA and Canals. And then we're going to go in a little bit deeper on 3 very timely topics: hedging program, cybersecurity, and physical security. So we're going to start up here and we're going to work you down a little bit and then we'll take it forward. Several team members will be joining me in this discussion today, so you don't have to listen to me for a full hour. Though believe me, I could talk for days about this. So I'm very excited to get started. If we can go to the next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Yes. So in terms of what we kind of went through that. Sorry about that. That wasn't in yesterday. Okay, great. Yeah. One more, please. And perfect. In terms of context, 3 things for you to know. Number 1, the why. We are focused on risk management and resiliency because our industry is evolving and at a rapid pace. We have processes in place that help us identify the uncertainties and assess them. That helps us to make decisions about how we're going to respond and understand the trade-offs that we're making when we do so. Essentially, what we're trying to do is to minimize any of the negative impacts or threats and try to drive more positive benefits or opportunities. To do this, we have an established set of risk appetite levels for different types of risks. Those are essentially our guardrails, and we compare our current level of risks to these appetites that we've set in place. That helps us know if we're mitigating enough, or if perhaps we're over mitigating and there's some opportunities we could be focusing on. Again, it's a trade-off conversation. We also scan the horizon to look for any developing issues so that they don't blindside us. And then finally, the last component that we have in place are resiliency plans that help us to bounce back should we actually have an event. If we can go to the next slide. The second contextual item is the how. Because change is constant, our risk profile will never be static. When we report to you on risk and resilience, it will always be a snapshot in time. The risk scores could go up, they could go down. There could be an emerging issue that we're facing and we're looking to respond to in real time. And there might have actually been an event and we're incorporating our lessons learned. So this is very normal. We're going to expect to see this change through the course of the year and even year over year. We follow a continuous life cycle for risk and resiliency measurement and response. And it begins with our strategies and goals. So Vision 2030. Delivering on the commitments that we've made today and keeping viable for tomorrow, that's really what this is all about. So again, begins with our strategies. We manage the risks to delivering upon them. And then in turn, our risk landscape helps to inform some of how we're thinking of our strategies and any evolution or refinement of those that we need to do. And you'll be hearing Eve over the course of the year talking about the Vision 2030 refresh. So we'll be partnering very closely with his organization in this. If it's okay, we can go to the next slide. Great. So the third item is the who. Yes, I'm going to say it. Everyone has a role in risk management and resiliency. But we make that really clear through our 3 lines model. So the business owns the management of risks and puts the controls in place. My team and other supportive functions help advise and help to monitor. Internal audit keeps everybody honest and provides that independent assurance. This all works within a robust framework of governance where we can escalate issues up through to NYPA executive management and then onwards to the trustees and risk and resiliency committee for your engagement and awareness, just like we're doing right now. The what I'm not going to address because that is essentially the rest of the 45 minutes or so of the content that we're covering today. So now what I hope you're thinking is, all right, this sounds pretty good, but how do we compare? So Chairman, if you don't mind, we'll go on to our next portion of this agenda, which is around our independent risk maturity assessment. The short answer to the question, how do we compare, is quite well. And in fact, for risk management, we're considered advanced. That's with a capital A. We have had 3 consecutive risk maturity assessments performed, but this prior year was the first time that we actually had a third party to perform that assessment for us. It was EY. Key takeaways that you'll see is that we have progressed higher every year, and we have progressed from being below benchmarks to now we are above benchmarks. The benchmarks are the horizontal lines going across the middle. And just for a quick orientation, we've showed a few different kinds. Interestingly, at the bottom is energy. The one in the middle is government. And on top, usually considered premier, is finance and insurance industry. Seeing this progress and looking at where we're at, we're now going to be shifting into a more continuous improvement mode in terms of our risk management and resiliency processes. Now, what that means is that we won't make major additions to our programs so much as just enhancements that will help us keep up with good and evolving practices in the space. Generally speaking, trying to achieve a level 5 would not be something we'd recommend or warrant. You would even notice that other more sophisticated industries such as finance really are kind of leveling out at the 3.5 right now. So we're looking to maintain our good level, perhaps shoot for a little higher, looking at the cost of the resources and tools needed in order to do so, taking a very balanced view.
And this is obviously great to see. I recall some animated discussions a few years ago about where we were versus where we needed to be, wanted to be, et cetera. So very positive outcome beyond the obvious, given just the sophistication of our organization and the world in which we operate. All the more important that we're, at an appropriate level. Readily agree and endorse risk management for the sake of risk management. That's ill-advised as well. And so, how we navigate that in an appropriate way. So kudos
Thank you.
to the Tom and the
NYPA
team, for, all
Canal's
that's been
team.
done to elevate us. So well done, team.
Yes. And with that, as we continue, I am going to invite Tom Spencer, our Senior Director of Enterprise and Operational Risk, to talk a little bit more detail about some of what we are scoring especially well on in the program and the few potential enhancement opportunities that we'll be considering. So here, Tom, I'll switch with you.
Not quite as many steps as Alexis, but. So good morning, trustees, NYPA colleagues and members of the public. If we could flip to the next slide, that would be great. So along with assessing our level of maturity, EY also identified some areas of advanced development and some areas of potential enhancements. So if we focus our attention to the left-hand side of the page, you'll see some of the areas of advanced maturity. One I really wanted to highlight here was the risk governance and risk escalation practices.
I was going to start with the board leadership. You skipped over that. Okay, sorry, go right ahead.
That's implied, right? Just about our risk escalation practices and at NYPA and Canals. We have a really well-defined and formalized risk governance structure here at NYPA and Canals, as Alexis mentioned previously. And because of that structure, we can escalate the right risk to the right people at the right level at the right time so they can make risk-informed decisions. This ensures alignment with our risk appetite and enables the business units to manage risk and capture opportunities in a very transparent manner. And it was one of the areas that EY recognized as a core strength to the risk management culture of the organization. So, especially for some of the newer board members, I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. If we turn our attention to the right side of the graph for the potential areas of enhancement, I wanted to call out the development of a formalized risk champion network between the risk management team and the business units. So from a practical standpoint, this really already exists. We collaborate very closely with the business units, but it is in a less formalized and decentralized manner than EY was looking for in their assessment. So over the next several months, the risk team will put pen to paper and explore some different risk champion concepts and ideas. We'll meet with leadership and find out, what is the real kind of feasibility of a formalized risk champion network, and is it something that we truly need? As my grandfather used to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So later in our presentation, you'll kind of see where we are from an overall risk management perspective. They also identified an area around mitigation strategies. So we're focused on making sure that our highly and medium rated risk have identified risk mitigation strategies mapped to the corresponding risk within our risk register. So by working with the risk owners to document and track our risk mitigation strategies, it will make it easier for the risk management team to make sure risk mitigation strategies are and plans are being completed, prioritized, and they are effective. I think the real underlying message from the independent study that was done by EY was that there aren't any significant gaps in the current risk management program. And even the areas of enhancements are really kind of just adjustments to a lot of the processes and practices we already have in place through existing efforts at NYPA and Canals. So I'll pause there for any questions before I flip to the next slide.
So no major holes to fill. It's just how we enhance where we are and build on, as opposed to a lot of good things, but a couple real gaps. We don't have any real gaps remaining at this point.
Yeah, that's, that was a key takeaway, I think.
Okay,
Great. As the previous slide indicated, we've been really working on advancing our maturity over the past several years. And in doing so, I think those gaps had been identified and we worked on closing them.
Great.
So I'm interested in understanding how a new threat would enter into the system, right? So most currently, AI is the big topic that everybody is talking about. So where is that conversation in your process?
So we have an emerging risk team that also reports up to Alexis. So we have monthly meetings when we sit right next to one another, my enterprise and operational risk team and the emerging risk teams. So we meet regularly to talk about what we're seeing on the emerging risk horizon and horizon scanning. And, right now we're trying to determine that inflection point of like, when does an emerging risk threat, right, turn into an actionable risk that we need to start, monitoring and reacting to. So we do use that. I mean, we go to industry forums. I know I've been to APPA meetings where we talk about emerging risk, LPPC, and, just benchmarking. So we do a lot around emerging risk, and that's how it kind of gets folded into our process.
Can I build on one more thing though? Because I know we've mentioned a few times that we're looking at mitigating any threats or negative impacts, but it's also about looking at potential positive impacts and benefits. So AI will look to be managing any of the risks to NYPA and exploring utilizing it as a tool, but we will also look at the guardrails that we put in place to help us use it effectively. And there may be opportunities where we can use that to supplement some of our current data analysis. So I think it'll always be about that balance of looking at it from the risk lens, but also looking at it from the well-managed opportunity lens.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My old school risk mindset, I was thinking about risk. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, we could flip to the next slide. So this will be an overview of our NYPA enterprise risk. So we can go to the next slide. So before I get started, just a little background for the board on our enterprise risk reporting and how we'll be providing updates. So twice a year, we'll report back to the board with an enterprise risk snapshot. As mentioned, Alexis is a snapshot and point in time. And we'll be updating the board on our NYPA and enterprise risk profiles twice a year. This used to be once a year, but hopefully by providing increased visibility, the board will have better insight to how our risks are changing over time. So we'll use sources such as risk surveys, risk workshops, internal audit reports, and benchmarking to update our enterprise risk scores. And we'll always do that in the context of our risk appetite and our risk management and controls environment. So with that, if we turn our attention to the graph on the slide, you can see that for the NYPA enterprise risk portfolio, it is being well managed and ensures that we are within the acceptable risk appetite range for those risks. The risk appetite score is labeled on the y-axis. Additionally, we currently have no enterprise risks that are exceeding our risk appetite. If you look at the chart, You can see where the risk impacts are challenging to reduce the gray areas. We focus on trying to decrease the likelihood, the blue bars, to try to lessen our exposure. In fact, 4 of the 5 changes, year-over-year changes in risk scores represented by the black bars with the arrows were due to a reduction in likelihood. So some examples I think are good if we could go through on how we try to mitigate risk, reduce likelihood, and align with risk appetite, or by decreasing our exposure to commodity market price volatility through our comprehensive hedging program, which is approved annually by the Executive Risk and Resilience Management Committee. And you guys might have some questions on that, but Dennis and Earl are going to go over that in detail after I'm done presenting. Or as Joe had mentioned, we achieved and continue to recertify our ISO 55000 asset management program that helps us lessen our critical infrastructure risk, or by having implemented a robust cybersecurity and physical security program to help limit threats from both external and internal bad actors, which Larry and Vic will touch on later in the presentation. It's through efforts like these and many others, the risk management team works in conjunction with the business units across NYPA to ensure we have a strong risk management and controls environment in place and is being operationalized. And in the eventuality a risk were to occur, we have a comprehensive business resiliency program in place, which not only allows us to bounce back, but bounce forward if a risk were to materialize. So through our continuous improvement processes, the risk team will evolve and keep pace with our ever-changing dynamic risk profile for NYPA enterprise level risk. So a lot of information to digest in 5 minutes or so. So we're happy to take any questions in that regard.
And do me a favor, next time, humor me, turn this chart this way. So I don't have to stand on my head to read the risks. Because, you know, I can get it going left to right. Do me a favor, do that. But so our top 3 risks are commodity volatility, critical infrastructure, and hydro generation.
Correct.
And those are our top 3 risks as you're defining them today.
That's correct. Right. So we met with the risk owners, risk sponsors, took into consideration a lot of factors, internal audit findings, insurance coverage, what we're doing to try to mitigate it. And then we scored the risk on our 5x5 matrix. So for these risks, they had a the highest risk score in our profile of 12.
Okay.
Can I add to you? I think another really key takeaway, and I know that Tom, you mentioned it, but just to reiterate, would be to notice that where we started off with our risk profile, if you look at the black bars, we had more risks in the high range, that sort of light, not alarming, but light red area. They've come now down through risk mitigation over the course of the year and are now in the low range. I think that's really important progress just to keep in mind. Again, that could change from time to time as external or internal conditions change, but overall there was a very positive movement in the profile. You'll see that none of the risks right now are above a medium in terms of total score.
Are you implying or stating that the reduction in risk level is a function of our own internal mitigation efforts as opposed to just the external markets or external environment?
It's a combination of both.
Okay.
For some of them where we have more direct control over, it's due to us, but for the other ones, obviously, it's not. Like the commodity market price volatility is a good example. Right through our hedging program, we can dampen the impacts of price volatility. So that's something that we can, have some degree of control over. When there's other ones, for example, destructive events risk is really about hurricanes, right? Flooding. We don't have a lot of control over that. So we do try to mitigate it through insurance products and other activities around resiliency and drills and exercises, but a lot more external influence on that risk score than others.
And when you benchmark yourselves, you're benchmarking against other leading top utilities or benchmarking against like public power authorities?
So for when we
maturity?
benchmarked for the maturity assessment, yeah, so there are 3 different bars.
Yeah.
We benchmarked against, those different sectors. I know, we did it through Gartner, is
Yeah.
the maturity. tool.
Carly, if you scroll back to that slide.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, response to Lewis's question, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
No,
Right there, right there.
Okay,
Yeah.
you can see at the bottom, Lewis,
Gas and electric industry, banking, finance, which will be the top. Yeah.
and then
that's
state and
helpful.
local
And
governments.
State and local governments.
Yeah,
Okay.
so surprisingly enough, right, there were only 17 participants that responded to the Gartner survey for state and local governments. But there were obviously 294 for finance industry,
Yeah.
which in this, as Alexa mentioned, is kind of like the standard, gold standard that we really tried to shoot for.
Is there a statewide, do we share this with the state? Is there a statewide risk and resiliency authority or board? We as NYPA, we're doing this ourselves for our own.
So we do this for ourselves
Yeah.
and in general, in the energy industry, there
It could
is
be a
that
real
good-
loaded effort there.
like, through good collaboration
Yeah.
and generic, non-proprietary sharing
Yeah.
about risk concerns and practices. And they're really great industry groups that are looking at things like transmission resilience, et cetera.
Yeah.
So we share common issues for some collaborative mitigation discussions.
That's helpful.
I think, you might have even talked about it earlier. There's a convener opportunity. I think you
Yes.
talked about convener
Yeah.
opportunity for us in terms of other authorities and agencies.
Yeah.
This is clearly an area. I confidently say we're
Top of class.
leading the pack here.
Yeah.
Confidently say we're leading the pack, and others could do very well to emulate and step up. So, yeah, we've made a real priority in terms of this in a broader based enterprise wide way. And frankly, I was gonna pass on why you only get 17 responses out of the government.
Yeah.
Risk management, what's risk management? Talk to us again about risk management. I mean, it's just not, a core competency, I think, in most of those, organizations. So, okay.
I mean, I will say, right, just 3 different organizations, I presented at the APPA conference and the LPPC conference. And, just, I have a biased opinion, but we are by far, just so far ahead of other organizations. And,
Shoulders.
Yeah.
yeah, it's not even close. In the appendix, we had like a speedometer. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at that, but like that was very well received, and I get phone calls all the time.
But we need to be. That's the other
No, we
point.
have to
This
be.
isn't a pat ourselves on the back. We need to be, because for all the good work we do, all it takes is one major miss or hiccup or boom, and it can disrupt that. Okay, sorry. Don't wanna-
Nope. There's no let up on our end.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Sorry, Carly, you can bump back to where Tom was or is going.
Keep going. We're on this slide. Yep. So originally I thought the chairman's only comment was going to be, I needed to flip my graph, and I'm like, that's not bad. I'll live with that. But
It was just a setup, Tom. You were making me work, so I would, have to.
So, along the same vein, we look at our Canal's enterprise risk portfolio. At the same time we do is the NYPA one. So when we look at the Canal's risk portfolio, I think it's important to note a couple of differences in the operating model. First is around the age of the critical infrastructure assets, right? As mentioned earlier, right? We're gonna have a 200-year anniversary. So the age of the assets are very old in some cases. And then secondly is around open access to the public, right? The Canals Corporation encourages, welcomes people to come visit the canals as a recreational opportunity, and help support the local communities, which is a little bit different than, what we do from a NYPA perspective. So if we start reviewing the graph on this slide, you can see that the Canals Enterprise Risk Portfolio predominantly falls in the lower residual risk range, outside the top 3 risk. So overall, Canals is being appropriately managed given the resources that they have. And this is supported when we start looking at the year-over-year changes of the 3 risks that decreased in score while the rest remain constant. As Alexis pointed out, those black bars are reductions in overall risk score. We currently do have 5 canals risks that exceed our risk appetite. But today I really wanted to focus on 2 of the highly rated risk of critical infrastructure and financial capacity risk, given the highly correlated nature of those risks and what we're doing to try to either reduce the likelihood and or the impacts of those risks. So on the critical infrastructure front, right, we now have a formalized long-range planning group in place. They meet regularly to evaluate and triage the most at-risk assets. We have also substantially increased our asset inspections. In some cases, we do daily walking inspections of high-risk asset areas. And we're also leveraging even more than we already have our shared services programs to help us enhance our dam safety and asset management programs. We've also acquired new equipment that enables us to internally fabricate unique infrastructure parts that are no longer really readily available given the age of some of our critical infra assets. Then on the financial capacity risk side, we had mentioned some of this previously. So just to follow up on that, we aggressively are pursuing additional funding opportunities, right? Allocating dollars within our own budget, seeking alternative sources through the state budget process, which Justin had mentioned the $50 million there. But we're also applying for local, state, and federal grants to see if there's any funding opportunities in those areas. We also established a canals funding working group. So just to make sure that we leave no stone unturned when looking for and exploring additional resources of capital. So in the short term, we are leveraging all available resources to triage and address those most at-risk assets to best limit our exposures. Over the long term, canals will be challenged to keep pace with the needed critical infrastructure improvements to address ongoing risk concerns without additional funding. So, I didn't necessarily hear all the presentations beforehand, but it's the same message that we had provided. So pretty happy with that. I didn't have to talk my way around something that somebody said that was different than mine. But I think the real message here is, there's more work to be done. But despite those challenges, the NYPA and canals risk teams, right, continue maximum efforts to try to reduce our canals risk and sharpen our alignment with risk appetite. With that, I'll pause for any questions.
And we can spend more time on it in, future committee meetings. I'd love to know how you quantify some of that. Obviously, we have a strong bias that the level of risk here is significant in terms of the aging infrastructure and the impacts on us from a capital and financial resources standpoint are substantial. So we can have that discussion because it seems as though there's a long way to go to get us out of the high risk category. So whether we're starting at 23 or 17, I'm not here to have a quantitative debate, but it's just our ability to make progress there. But
yeah, and that's one of the
well captures the essence of the issue. Not trying to
and that's
take
one
the
of the
debate.
one of the challenges kind of with these 6-month updates. A lot of those critical infrastructure asset upgrades happen over years.
Sure.
So to really move the needle, it's difficult to capture and quantify. But Dave Mellon is here today. I just wanted to thank him that I've worked really closely with his team on the canal side, and just want to make sure I give him a shout out and recognize all the efforts that they are doing at canals. But with that, if there are no questions, thank you for your time. And I did want to say, Chairman, I love the color of your jacket and the pattern on it.
Yeah, nice job. Okay. I can turn it either way, Tom. Whatever.
Just don't want to block the podium because we're inviting up. We are now.
Tom, I
moving
take
to the
all
house.
schmooze. I really appreciate that very much. All right.
we're just gonna move down now through the clouds and hit the ground. And that's with our 3 deeper dives today. We're going to start with a review of our merchant portfolio hedging program. So we're gonna invite up Dennis Chang, who is our Senior Director of Market Analysis and Hedging, along with Earl Alagi, our Director of Market and Credit Risk.
All right.
Okay. Buckle up, here we go, folks.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Board of Trustees and members of the public. I'm Dennis Chang, and I'll quickly run through our hedging program for our NYPA's merchant portfolio. Before I begin, I'll just reinstate that what the NYPA's merchant portfolio means. It's the portfolio that consists of the megawatts that we generate off of our generation assets, but are not dedicated to any customer programs. They make up about 20% of the entire generation volume, and the rest obviously being allocated to our customer groups. These megawatts are sold directly into the energy market through the ISO, which means that they're exposed to the price volatility risk of the general power markets. Hence our hedging program. Our program consists of a strategy that allows us to bring our support our merchant gross margin, much like that solid blue line you see there across over the years, which obviously you can see when you compare it with the orange, it is a lot more stable and predictable as opposed to the orange line where it's moving along with the actual volatility of the electric prices. How we do this, we use a strategy called the programmatic hedging protocol. It's essentially what it is. It's executing hedges uniformly over time. Oftentimes people will refer to this as the dollar cost averaging approach. Just to remind everyone, the trustees had authorized the ERRMC committee to allow NYPA hedging team to go as far out as 4 years in terms of hedges. So we stay within those guidelines when we accumulate these hedge positions using the programmatic approach. And we tried well in advance to the delivery date, and we try to hit a percentage target for each of those outer years using this program. Next slide, please. All right, so a lot has happened over the past 5 years economically, just the world in general, that has impacted the price volatility of power prices. Our hedging strategy, as you can sort of see in this graph here, has brought us fairly close or within closer range to our financial targets. Our financial targets are really set for budget certainty purposes prior to walking into those years. I mean, we could quickly go through the events, but starting with the pandemic, the economic recovery of it, the war that broke out in Ukraine, and just varying weather patterns across all seasons, these have all impacted the volatility of power prices and even gas prices to an extent. But like I was saying, from this graph, you will see that in the past 5 years, the blue bars actually represent our merchant margins with the hedges, so the actual portfolios. And on average, you can't see any numbers here, but on average, that comes out to about 17% far from target, as opposed to I've been calling it orange, but now it looks yellow to me, but as opposed to the other bars that represent a portfolio that's totally exposed and doesn't have any hedges alongside of it. It's roughly about 35, anywhere between 35 to 40%. Excuse me, far from target. So we can obviously tell that our hedging strategy is working for our objective of reaching our financial targets.
Although optically, I challenge that. It looks to me like we left money on the table over the last 5 years in the aggregate. So make me feel better about that.
It's really the hedging strategy is the purpose is for price certainty and
Yeah,
also
understand.
creating that.
I get that, but just quantification. I mean, I love the slide and appreciate it. I asked about it the last time. So it's okay. Yeah. Just clarity, transparency. If we left money on the table in the aggregate over the last 5 years.
Right. Well,
That's a simple yes or no. I'm
yes.
not trying to outdo you. You're smarter than I am. I'm just asking you a simple question. There's no bad answer here. I'm just, it looks like we've left money on the table.
Yes, with the volatility of the price market, yes, we did. There were moments when the prices would have peaked at a time when our hedges have actually locked it in below that.
So we're rethinking or always refreshing and looking at our
course.
parameters.
Of course.
Since we want to optimize, so optimization isn't just the best it can be, it's stability and eliminating volatility. I get all of that, but okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the transparency there.
No problem.
Okay.
I think we could go to the next slide. All right, so just looking forward, we're continuing to execute our 3-year hedging strategy. Like I said, it's at a progressive approach. We're layering in hedges throughout the time frame, well in advance before we actually enter the working year. On this chart here, it's basically just indicating those percentage of volume targets that we're trying to hit by before the end of 2024, so this year. And throughout the process of execution, we do our due diligence in our team to closely monitor our customer load obligations as that may fluctuate over time, and then potentially impact our merchant megawatts, effectively impacting the percentage of hedges that we put in place. Also, we work very closely with Earl and his team to explore different trade instruments and execution methods in carrying out our hedging strategy over the years.
Have we tweaked these targets as a result of what our experience is, I assume, or?
Yes, there's always a look back and a review of how the
Based on what you
previous
just
years
showed
have,
us, yeah.
how they've performed, and then we
Tweak
get back
it.
on the table and
Okay.
reassess these percentage targets every year.
And explain the factors here, energy capacity, what does, so our forecast for this year plus 2025, what does 45% energy mean as a factor?
So we're in the market, so the New York ISO would give us the opportunity to participate in the energy market as well as the capacity market. So
Okay.
those are two sort of different avenues that we can build a revenue stream in. We lump it together. We call it a merchant portfolio.
So New York ISO would say you can participate up to 45% into their total energy market?
No. This is strictly just speaking in regards to our hedges. Our hedges to protect those revenue streams that we can actually build.
So we're protecting on our side 45% of our energy
Yes,
generation
total
and
generation.
65% of our energy capacity.
Yes.
And then in the out years, it goes down in a almost linear fashion because we are protecting less of the out year.
Basically due to uncertainty.
Yeah.
Because we always have the physical markets through the ISO to actually create those revenue streams. We don't want to lock in everything through our financial hedges and then sort of handcuff ourselves when we walk into those further out years.
And the other ISO participants are allowed to hedge in similar capacities as well?
Yeah, we have our own program.
Yeah.
I mean, we can take this more offline, but I mean, this is our own program, Louis, as opposed to not an ISO driven initiative or, collaboration. This is how we're functioning in terms of how we're managing our exposure and opportunity as we sell into the markets. Okay.
Although they're dynamic markets, so if everyone's moving in the same direction, right? I mean, it's always the issue with hedging, right? So the empirical analytical issue is that you're also, there's a factor in here that you're trying to figure out the behavior of the markets as well as you go forward. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although we're trying to really, I mean, I'll defer to others smarter than I, but we're just trying to eliminate volatility. We're less concerned with leaving money on the table, back to my earlier question, they are with stability and predictability.
Correct.
Right, given the strength of our balance sheet, the size of our, position, et cetera, it's far more important that we have a predictable
Mhm.
revenue stream than that we optimize and move and play the timing game or otherwise.
Right,
Okay?
it's
We're
sort of
trying
like
to
a
take more
laddering
of that out.
approach.
Yeah.
So the idea is to keep chipping away to the out years, but as we get towards, say, October, November, we want to be at that highest level for the following year. So we have some certainty, predictability about what that
Right.
revenue will be. And then those other percentages will continue to climb as we go through the next year. And it becomes like a triangle that keeps rolling.
No, that's helpful.
We're not betting the farm on this.
Yeah.
We don't need to.
Yeah.
So it's an important component of our revenue stream, but it's the predictability
Yeah.
that matters the most.
For us, it's more smoothing and predictability.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry,
It's a
go ahead.
strategy subject to change, which is why
Sure.
there's constant monitoring. So when we talk about this is our strategy for the next 3 years, and you hit the minimum for
Mhm.
those years, but if we, like, I think Adam said, when we get to October, if things look different, those numbers aren't hard and fast for 2026 or 2025, right?
Yes,
I mean, these are not,
Can do more.
They're minimums.
Yeah,
minimums.
they're the bare minimum,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
bare
Thank you.
minimum percentages.
Maybe I think I'd like to add that this portfolio that Dennis is managing talks about the merchant portfolio. The customer solutions team takes the efforts to sell that energy product to our customers. So this is just the residual. So they're always looking for opportunities to monetize those megawatts, whether it benefits the state or the authority.
That is why I had said that this is like 20%
Right.
of the actual total.
We'll go
generation
deeper
volume.
with, in one of our committee, we'll come up with a separate session. I mean, it's challenging, informative, interesting. I mean, we all need to get a handle on it.
Yeah.
But, we also have an appreciation for the range of exposure here
No, this was
as
a
well.
fantastic level set. We appreciate it.
thank you.
And just the last bullet there is, as part of due diligence, we would always test the hedging the current strategy, as trustee member had mentioned, but against the ever so often changing market conditions. In the case that we may need to propose a change of direction or an added protocol, obviously with the approval of the ERMC.
Mhm.
Okay.
With that, I'll pass it on. to
All right.
Rob.
Okay, good morning, trustees, executive management team. So as Dennis mentioned in the hedge program, when you enter into a hedge program, you're involving financial transactions with third parties. Therefore, most organizations establish a strong governance around this activity. When the strategies are presented to the ERRMC, we take a look at the objectives for the year, as Dennis had mentioned, sort of our risk appetite, and we set the goals and targets for approval at least once a year. Upon approval of that strategy, my team then comes in where we monitor for the successful execution. We look at things such as market risk, where we provide daily portfolio evaluations to the organization. We take a look at risk attribution, what may drive this portfolio up or down. We also do probabilistic modeling to provide a high and low range to the organization to give the traders an idea whether volatility is increasing or decreasing. We also then track it for adherence to strategy targets throughout the year. That number that Dennis had presented earlier, the 45%, is actually very measured throughout the year. So what we do is we monitor for that throughout, and then we report whether they're on target. So there are no surprises in December. Also, we take a look at operational risks in that there's, as I mentioned, there's a lot of transactions that go between NYPA and other counterparties. So we make sure that all of those transactions are accurately entered into our systems. We also then check it against a list of approved instruments that the risk committee has allowed. But then also we take a look at each trader to see if they're operating within their daily limits. Lastly, we take a look at the credit risk of this portfolio, as that's part of managing this book. And if Harley, if I could have the next page, please. So when we enter into a hedge transaction, while we're reducing our market risk, we're actually transferring that exposure to a counterparty. An unwanted outcome of this is that when that counterparty defaults, in the rare case they do default, then they wouldn't be able to meet their contractual obligation, and therefore that risk sort of comes back to our portfolio. So to manage this risk, NYPA, I'm happy to report, has a portfolio of 20 plus diversified counterparties that are all investment grade and agency rated. And that at this time, we have no exposure to subpar credit. We have nothing below investment grade and non-rated counterparties.
So counterparty risk, you feel very, very good about.
Yes,
Great.
trustee.
Great.
So then this is Dennis's team manages the credit, the energy portfolio. My team then takes a look at the credit portfolio of counterparties. What we do is we continually monitor for events in the news, looking for any, adverse economic conditions or any downgrades of our counterparties using the rating agencies. We also do stress testing. We also determine and collect the collateral for these positions. In case of a financial insolvency, we want to make sure our positions are collateralized with either letters of credit or cash. And at the same time, we impose internal limits that are lower than the credit that is afforded to us, to then kind of foster a diversification and use of the counterparties so that we're not singularly concentrated on each one.
Great.
With that said, I think Dennis had mentioned our teams work closely together to manage this higher level enterprise risk that Tom had reported on, the commodity volatility. With that said, Dennis and I would be happy to answer any questions.
And then from a trusteeship perspective and to a fiduciary perspective, how do you and your teams interact with finance? Because obviously the models have to flow into your forecasts and models as well, Adam.
Yeah, so we work very, very closely with both groups. We have regular meetings. We talk about what's going on in the markets, what we're trying to achieve from a financial perspective in terms of our targets. And sometimes that will indicate, speeding up or slowing down the strategy or doing things like that. We do talk about new and creative ideas we can do with, like, for example, a chairman's question about, are you leaving money on the table? How could you possibly mitigate that or address that? So we've been looking at different products, options, puts, calls, things of that nature. Harder to do because some of these markets are less liquid, but in theory and concept, that would be something you could do to mitigate, that leaving the money on the table. So we're always working to come up with, different strategies that can achieve our financial goals. So the groups all work very closely.
And we'll continue the dialogue.
And again, back to managing all that, right? So what they said, a couple things to keep in mind. We want to get to the point where we're hedging enough to protect that downside risk, because in a very bad year, right, that could have an impact on not only financial targets, but ratings from the rating agencies. So we're looking to protect that. But the other points that were made to keep in mind, we're always trying to sign up customers. So we never want to find ourselves into where we've oversold and we'd have to unwind. And also the other variable here is volume risk, which is based on water flow. So right today, we don't hedge that today, but we are looking at parametric insurance or other things potentially with the captive that could look at that. But as of today, that still represents a risk that is unhedged that's out there. Also, if that drops, you don't want to be in an oversold position.
That's helpful
Right.
level set for us.
In the spirit of flyover, let's keep flying, okay? This one, we can get caught going down the rabbit hole. Very sophisticated, top-notch, high-end. So Earl, Dennis, appreciate that very much. Very impressive and, good work. All right.
So we're gonna fly from electrons and data and dollars straight to data and the cloud. We're gonna introduce Vic Costanza. And sorry, Chairman, we have one interim left. He is our interim CISO.
Okay.
Put up with one more interim.
Vic's been around forever though, so he doesn't
Yes.
seem interim.
24 years.
We all know Vic, so.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone, members of the public, board, as well as NYPA employees.
Today, I'll be providing an update on our cybersecurity key areas of focus, and we're really focusing on 3 areas that I'll be building upon. And this builds upon what the update that we provided in December and shows some of the areas of focus. So as I mentioned, we're keeping on our journey, across the landscape to basically catch threats early in the kill chain, maintain a low risk appetite, as Tom mentioned, and continue a great progress overall. But our job is never done. We never become complacent. So as shown here, cyber is a team sport. We have strength in numbers, right? We have to continue to work with our various partners from the federal, state, also our vendor partners and customers, really, to not go about it alone. We have to share information and be critical about staying ahead of the threats that are presented to us. And we're keeping pace through continued proactive detection and protection with our cybersecurity operations led by Dan Wasley and his team here. Dan's over on the right there. And again, federal, state, and vendor partners. And not only receiving threat intelligence, but sharing it out. So we mentioned in December, we've pivoted from receiving of threat intelligence to threat hunting, proactively looking through the environment, seeing where threats may be proliferating or showing up as a potential vulnerability, and then proactively addressing them. And then if we see those types of trends, we're sharing them out collectively with our partners so that they can get ahead of it in the various industries, the threat landscape, and across the energy ecosystem. So again, if something should proliferate in our environment, we're also increasing our enterprise resilience by conducting many functional exercises throughout the year. And these include disaster recovery exercises, incident response exercises, and awareness program activities. So some of these include test restoration from our various layers of backup. So if something were to get into the environment, we ensure we have pristine backups that can be brought in to restore our systems in case something did manifest. We do DR drill failovers to an alternate facility that's actually based up in New Hartford, New York. So we do that as part of our annual process. We developed and conduct several incident response exercises throughout the year. We don't do just one, we do many across our regions, and we tailor them to our facilities, our systems, our various groups to get them engaged. It's really important that they get the muscle memory to detect and to respond to issues as they're detected in the environment or as the systems require. And then one of the most important areas too, as Alexis mentioned, it's really all about engaging our users and our staff. Risk and resilience. Everybody's part of risk and resilience. Well, everybody's part of cybersecurity as well. So we build our cyber awareness program to challenge our users to be vigilant as a first line of defense and reduce that susceptibility. So we do phishing exercises. We have events. We engage, with cybersecurity at work and at home. So we're part of the family events. The various exercises. We're also part of the health fairs, and we do safety tailgates as well. We build that just like safety across the organization. Cybersecurity is a part of that. So that helps us to be vigilant and resilient. And we continue to strengthen our foundation through innovative information technology and operational technology security capabilities and add them to our portfolio. We can't become stale. The landscape changes, and we have to make sure our tools are evolving to keep pace with that. So we proactively innovate with various vendor partners such as Dragos and others to ensure that we're taking a look at these new capabilities, see how they fit in our portfolio, and then actually operationalize them in our environments. And also, We can go to the next slide, I'm sorry. Yep. As mentioned too, this graphic shows how we share that information both in and out. These are various federal, state, industry, vendor partners. We're receiving intelligence from them. We basically take that intelligence, we assess it, how it applies to our environment, and we respond and take the appropriate actions proactively. But then again, as I mentioned, if we're finding threats or finding indicators in our environment early on, we're also sharing them out because these are things that these partners want to see to get ahead of those threats, within the industry. So together we can, secure the broader energy ecosystem. And that's just exactly what we do. We could go to the next slide. If there's any questions. And then we don't stop there. We mentioned our customers. We further enhance our capabilities in advisory support by providing our customers various offerings through our Cyber Collective Defense Consortium. And basically, we're helping them to identify things in their environment that they may not have even known about, vulnerabilities, best practices they should be following, because they are a target as well. And by securing them, it helps us to be secure, because if that becomes the playground for some of the initial attacks and reconnaissance, we can then learn what's being targeted and apply that to our systems, in the bulk electric system environment as well. And we've received several positive testimonials, as you can see here, on those various offerings that we've provided. So they've been very appreciative of everything that we've done with them, and we're continuing to expand it to all 51. And our state partners have actually looked at this as a model in other areas of engagement with municipalities. So we've helped engage with them as well. And again, we're not just.
We're only as strong as our weakest link here, right? And
exactly.
we've got some weak links out there that ratchet up our exposure. So got it.
Exactly. And we don't wait to engage with them when there's an incident or an event.
Sure.
We proactively meet with them on a regular basis.
Lift them up.
So, and we work with our SSM partners as well to meet with our vendors to share best practices and be proactive. So be glad to answer any questions and appreciate it.
Obviously, this is always high profile. And
Yes.
when we think risk, we all immediately jump to cyber, one of only tentacles, but I happened to catch a soundbite. I think it was FBI Director Ray testifying a week or two ago, and it was very sobering to listen to the soundbite in terms of, I think he was talking specifically about the Chinese at the time, whatever the investment they're making to disrupt. And if we devoted all of our resources, we'd still be outflanked, outnumbered. We understand and appreciate the intensity and the significance of the efforts here. And great to see the collaboration. This is one where we have to lean on partners to benefit.
Definitely.
Because we can't tackle it on our own for sure. So.
Yeah, we continue to assess and adjust
great.
where we need to. Yeah.
All right. Anything else for Vic? Running dialogue there.
Yeah.
More we talk about it, the more nervous you'll get. So let's keep flying. All right. Okay.
Thanks,
Vic.
everyone.
Appreciate it.
And just to round off the discussion about cybersecurity, Adam was going to give a brief update on our cyber resilience insurance policy.
When all else fails, buy insurance.
Exactly. What happens if there is a unfortunate event and there is a loss? What can we do to make sure we have some coverage for that? This is a good example of a couple things. One is our cyber program, how we get insurance for cyber, but also how we're now incorporating the captive, which we formed, last year, and utilizing it to provide value. And this is also a good example of how it's providing benefits. So we have a $50 million policy that was renewing, and the reason we only have 50 is because that's the amount the market would give us. We couldn't buy more if we tried. If we were to just roll over that policy this year, our premiums would basically be flat to actually less by a slight amount, but And that is a result of the underwriting that was done. We hired a new broker. And this is an area where you see premiums going up 15, 20%. So the fact that if we just did a straight renewal and to have our premiums flat, it means the underwriting came back and said, from the outside, from the market perspective, we have a good solid program. So there's a good positive there about the program. But what can we do to get more coverage? So what we've been able to do by utilizing the captive is by having the captive provide a layer of insurance at the front end of 5 million, putting this into the captive and then building what they call a tower. So we take the old policy we had, which was Aegis, which was 50 million, and then we build on top of that another 10 million to get a total of $65 million of total coverage, which we wouldn't have been able to get before at, roughly the same amount as we would have paid for the 50 million in the prior year. And actually, again, some of that is savings because 227,000 is a premium that NYPA will pay into the captive for its share of that $5 million first loss position, assuming there's no events. That 200,000 is retained in a captive and continues to build our reserves. As these programs go on, you continue to build the reserve. So it's just a good example to show, because without a captive, you can't access the reinsurance market. If you see these other carriers, EIM, CAP, Canopius, these are not familiar names because these are all reinsurers that, again, you cannot get to unless you have your own insurance company. Additionally, if there were to be a cyber event and it was considered to be an act of war or as a terrorist related event, we then kick into the TRIA, which we also have as a result of having the captive. And there we would have up to $500 million of coverage. So, again, just showing how the value of having this is going to benefit our overall program and coverage, if there was an unfortunate event of some sort. So just to show a little bit of relationship there.
That's great. You talked about that as the captive was set up, so it's great to see, that
Utilized.
real time.
utilized.
We're doing what we said we were
Yeah,
going to do.
exactly. It's always better when it works, Great. Thanks, Adam.
Okay, last topic. Are you still with me? Okay. With feet planted firmly on the ground, we're going back to basics now. And so physical assets and people. So we have Larry Mallory who's going to present on physical security and crisis management.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Larry Mallory. I'm representing our corporate physical security and crisis management team. I have just one slide and a brief 5 minutes just to touch on some
That's why you're the closer,
That's why I'm
Larry.
the
That's why
closer.
you're
One
the
slide,
closer.
here to go. But I do want to talk about, just tie together some of the elements that we've talked about. Alexis, Vic, Tom, and the team talked about collaboration, talked about this being a team sport. And really, we can't stress that hard enough. This really is a team sport. And we work together as a group on a formal basis and an informal basis. So some of it is project-based, some of it is committees that we're on, some of it is just conversations, but we have regular reoccurring weekly resilience touch points, regular reoccurring meetings with our intelligence partners just to make sure that we're all staying on the same page. Trustee Gonzalez, you asked about horizon scanning. So one of the things I wanted to highlight, the last bullet here, we have a series of physical security intelligence tools, deep web monitoring, dark web monitoring, open source media, feeds from the FBI, feeds from the ISAC, feeds from the State Fusion Center, which we selfishly use for a physical security purpose, right? In working with Alexis's team, they determined, hey, we could use some of this data for our horizon scanning. So we were able to come up with a series of regular reoccurring reports. They get them on a monthly basis, leveraging those tools for their purpose. So that's just an example of the collaboration, something that frankly, I would love to take credit for it, not our idea, their idea, looking at the tools and how we put it together. So that was one of the points. The second is we spend a lot of time on preparedness. Vic mentioned preparedness. Across the NYPA and Canal's enterprise, we completed 58 drills or exercises last year. That's sort of the sweet spot for us, is between 50 and 60, because the actual drill event, sort of the icing on the cake, right? The half a day of the drill, the planning that goes into that, the preparation, and then the executing the learnings, right? The biggest part of those is executing the lessons learned, learning from the drills. So that 50 to 60 is our sweet spot number of that, where we can actually do a good job and implement some of the learnings. So a couple of them I wanted to highlight for you is GridX last year, which was a large one. On the energy side, GridX is a EISAC drill. That's the Electric Sector Information Sharing Center. Many organizations in North America participate in that. It's physical security, cybersecurity, incident response. A lot of effort goes into that. in a future meeting, I'd love to give you a deep dive on that type of stuff if you're interested. So that was 2 preparedness message. I have 1 more to go. I'm still in my 5 minutes, but future considerations. So this year, we have a lot of activities going on to help further our resilience efforts and further our security and preparedness efforts. One of them is an ongoing security technology assessment. And again, that's with a lot of teams. The SSM team is involved. So we have in 2 of our sites up in Utica and down in Senior, where we are implementing a state-of-the-art intrusion detection. So some radar-based military type stuff that is now available to the public, and we're looking to roll that out across the organization. I'm super excited about that. And the team is always up for new challenges. So a year ago, if you would have told me, hey, we're going to have to plan for a solar eclipse, I would have told you, what is that, right? But the amount of preparation, the amount of operations, security, crisis management, traffic that is going into the solar eclipse planning, which will be a great event in Western New York, is something that the team has embraced. So enterprise-wide team effort, a lot of energy spent on preparedness, have future considerations and flexible, and hopefully I brought you home quickly. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
No, appreciate all those efforts, and yeah, we're exposed every day, and you guys do, you know, a great job of ensuring we're as prepared as we can be, and otherwise protecting our flanks all the time. So well done.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just thank you so much for your attention. This was a lot. So I hope if you leave with any 2 impressions, comprehensive, collaborative. Those are really the 2 key elements that NYPA has in terms of its risk management and resiliency programs, and there'll be more to come throughout the year. So thank you again.
Thank you, Alexis. You know, comprehensive, collaborative, which, you know, equals effective. That's the other thing I would just underscore for, you know, all of us. The outcomes, as you've seen, as they're measured, quantified internally, externally. Great to get the external validation. It's been very, very effective. And it's one of those, you're proud but humble, because the bad actors are always out there and they're hustling hard. So we say it with humility, but with real pride, and appreciate the great work. Alexis, great to have you on board, and team, thank you for your time. And we look forward to further engaging, you know, through the committee and other presentations as we go. All right, next up, Kayla and the EJ work. Gonna give us a little update.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to present. Again, my name is Kyla Mains. I'm the Vice President.
Kyla, my apologies.
Vice President of Environmental Justice. So just as a quick reminder, our environmental justice program is designed to provide educational services and programs for the underserved communities that intersect with our statewide facilities and our strategic operations. So you heard a lot of information. We really look at leveraging all that expertise for the benefit of our communities. Now, Joe Kessler mentioned the US drone program. We did a drone soccer competition between the NYPA drone pilots and the high school students. And I think the pilots need a rematch, because I think we did. So that's an ongoing battle there. So every periodically, our team presents on the college access programs that we have as part of the DEI initiative, and I'm going to be able to present that coming up. But we were asked to present, just give a snapshot on some of the programs that you may not have heard about. So I wanted to bring Alex DeRosa and Matt Caruso, who are the people that are actually doing the work. They lead a team of 6 educational, environmental education educators. They go around the state. This is the longest I've ever seen them sit still, because they work weekends, evenings. I think last week they were at a church doing a Spanish program, after Mass. So they really work. They've been with us since the inception of the EJ program, and a lot of the programs that we do are really some of their ideas. So I'd like to introduce, I think it's Alex that comes up first. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. Yes, happy to be here, excited to talk about our programs. Again, my name is Alex DeRosa. So you're used to hearing regular updates from Kyla regarding PTech, but I'm going to focus on more recent growth within some of our programs, and I'll start by giving an update on PTech. Last summer, we had 40 paid interns, increasing the total number of interns to 82 since the program began in 2021. The goal of the program is really to prepare students for utility careers and align their studies with energy industry skill sets, something that we're very proud of and we were able to accomplish for the first time last year was offering industry certifications as part of the internship program. So we had about 24 interns who earned energy auditing certifications or HVAC and CALT certifications. And we had interns that received pilot certifications or FAA 107, very impressive. For us, this was a great step in expanding the workplace experience that we work really hard to tailor for these students to give them the best 6-week internship possible. We keep in touch with
pilot certification
they
in 6
did.
weeks.
They did. One of them, Henry, specifically accomplished that in a week. So yeah, he was fabulous.
Highly motivated and talented, obviously.
Yes, they absolutely are. And that brings me to my next point. We keep in touch with a lot of our interns via LinkedIn, or we text them, email them. And recently we were so happy to find out that one of our past interns, Adina, who is in the red shirt on the screen, who some of the trustees may remember, she presented in 2021 during the summer with some of the scholars. She has recently been hired as an assistant system operator at the Clark Energy Center.
Hey, all right.
Yes, no, very exciting. Very exciting. She'll be taking her NERC exam soon. She's studying, so we'll wish her luck. Also, 2 of our interns last summer, Doha and Louise, were hired by Mason Deb, a NYPA diverse supplier, as energy auditors. They're going to be auditing DOE buildings. And Leo, one of our past interns, was recently hired full-time at Con Ed. So it's really exciting for us to be, it's really exciting for us to be able to work with our stakeholders in a way that's translating into careers. Having such an impact has been really rewarding for our team. I have the best job at NYPA. This summer, we're going to host 50 interns. We're increasing the number a little bit. And in the fall, so this summer, we're going to have 50 interns. We're going to be working with cybersecurity, with the UAS teams, develop really interesting, those are the glamorous projects. The interns get to fly drones, they get to work on cybersecurity projects. This is how we can draw interns into the program and make it as appealing and, appealing to the youth. In the fall, we're launching our junior fellowship program. That's going to give PTech students an opportunity to engage in a paid year-long energy-related research project. That'll be new for us. And really excited for the next year of
Some of the
PTech.
lessons we've learned, given the tracker, how we can have more of an impact, how we can, accelerate their learnings, et cetera.
Yes, it's a different way that we can engage with some of the younger PTech students. We have limitations on who we could hire as NYPA employees. They have to be 18 years old. So this is a way that we can engage with younger students, give them workplace experience opportunities. Yeah.
Great. Fantastic.
Yes, the next program I'll discuss is the EV Workforce Development Program. This program donates NYPA and Canal's retiring EV and hybrid fleet vehicles, also level 2 chargers and insulated hand tools to auto tech programs across the state. This program it's going to educate the next generation of auto techs on zero emission vehicles. By 2030, all the new passenger vehicles that are sold within the state will need to be zero emission. And we want to ensure that our stakeholders are trained for these available careers. Currently, it's estimated that under 2% of the automotive service excellent techs have EV certifications. So hopefully we will help to increase those numbers. We're finding a need for entry-level Safety 101 introductory EV curriculum at the high school level. The DOT has approached us, BOCES has approached us, and we're working with the state ed department to find a way to support the rollout of curriculum that was developed by Capital Region BOCES to reach all of the schools that we work with through this program. This is actually a photo of the car that we donated to Capital Region BOCES. They're one of our first donation recipients in the program. And most recently, moving on to the third bucket here, a new pathway for us is aligning our programs with NYPA strategic transmission initiatives. So we're building industry micro-credentials that will allow our stakeholders to be more competitive in transmission-related careers. We partnered with Stony Brook University's Center for Integrated Electric Energy Systems to develop a micro-credential in transmission. This course will provide literacy into growing transmission disciplines like HVDC, power conversion, microgrids, and home energy integration of renewable energy. We're currently piloting this course, this 12-week course, with the electrical trade students from Eastern Suffolk BOCES. Long Island is a target population for us for a few reasons. NYPA has 2 generation assets on the island, and residents are already seeing in their neighborhoods, offshore wind projects and the discussion of new transmission projects and upgrades to bring renewable energies to Long Island and the rest of the state. So we're working so that our stakeholders in Brentwood, Holtsville, along the project pathways are equipped to compete in that energy job market. We also worked with Stony Brook University to translate their existing industry-level offshore wind training curriculum into a digestible middle school and high school STEM program. Middle school and high school is the age where we could effectively catch a student and change their career trajectory and possibly influence their future academic decisions. So far with this offshore wind curriculum, we've touched over 1,300 students from the Brentwood School District on offshore wind, and we're going to continue deploying that curriculum throughout the year across Long Island and looking forward to doing that.
Terrific.
Yep.
Great outcomes, great news, and great report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Matt.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Good morning, Chairman, Board of Trustees, and everybody here. My name is Matthew Caruso. I'm one of the other managers working alongside Alex. Today, I'm going to be talking about our climate justice programming, more specifically our food justice programming. So I do apologize in advance of any of the food puns or planting puns that I'm going to make throughout this whole entire presentation, but I promise it's going to be well worth it. So since 2018, we've actually been working and installing very high-tech, state-of-the-art hydroponic systems all throughout New York City public school systems. We've been supporting them, whether it's through maintenance, harvesting activities, hands-on STEM engagements, and also some of our other programming that we do for adults in the community as well, working directly with the parents of those students at those schools. Once a year, we actually work with all the schools that are part of that network and some of the other schools that aren't part of our network, but we bring them all together for a annual youth conference. Last year was actually the first conference that we were able to hold in person due to the pandemic. I'm happy to say we had over 900 students attend that full day conference. Kyla spoke at that conference. There was actually the director of the new urban farming initiative at the mayor's office that also spoke at that conference. So it was a full day event of students being able to pretty much share their experiences and speak with subject matter experts that were leading pretty much the industry and present on research topics that they were working on with their teachers throughout the whole entire year. So again, very, very excited that this program has been able to progress. And we're actually starting to see a lot of different successes that are coming from that program. More specifically, some of the community learning circles that we've been implementing this past 2 years. We've been working with, the photo in the middle is actually with Astoria Houses. It's with their group, with a group called Hannock Cornerstone Astoria. They're pretty much the folks that oversee the youth programming and STEM initiatives there after school. We were able to bring and do a full day climate day activity with their students after school and bring in a community vendor from Harlem. They're called Harlem Grown. Pretty much teach them how to do all the nutritious things that they can from pretty much taking all the produce coming from the equipment that we installed in that community center. We've also installed another hydroponic system with Uprose. They're the oldest Latino environmental justice group in pretty much Brooklyn, I think of actually New York City, if I'm not mistaken. But we've installed another hydroponic system at their own space. We actually just led a learning circle last Friday with them. It was a Friday night event. It was an intergenerational event where we had adults and their students and young kids from kindergarten to second and third grade, pretty much teaching them about food justice, you know, the different ways they could be advocates for their own school, advocates for their own community, and even different ways in how they could be more proactive and grow food in their own homes and apartments. So everyone pretty much walked away with a tiny little water bottle with some seeds and got their own kind of like starting kit to grow fresh herbs and lettuce and kale and things of that nature at their own apartments and their own homes. The next thing I want to talk about is the National Utility Research Collaborative that we've done in partnership with EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute. To date, started dating back all the way since 2020. We've installed 3 retrofitted shipping containers, 2 in Buffalo, 1 with a organization called Feed More Western New York. They are an emergency food bank located in the, I guess, kind of western to middle Buffalo area up there. They service all of Erie County. So they have a Meals on Wheels program as well as various different nutrition-based programs where they're servicing that community, providing nutritious food, a lot of it coming from the container that we installed back in 2020. That container actually did so well that they were able to get more funds to actually buy a second container. So we're seeing a lot of great success at that site. Actually did get a lot of the data that we were just pretty much waiting for with that container. And they pretty much grew throughout the first 2 years, close to 1,200 pounds worth of produce. And that's a mixture of kale, lettuce, things like strawberries, mint, all of a combination. At a very, very low rate, pretty much per day when it comes to kilowatt hours, we were looking at an average of 135 to 150 kilowatt hours. So when you put that to kind of kilowatt hours to a pound, they were roughly growing about 2 pounds of produce a day, which is quite remarkable.
So we're pleased with the outcomes.
Absolutely.
I remember that day well when, you know, we opened it, launched it, whatever, ribbon
Yeah.
cutting it, whatever.
Probably
you
the
wanna
only
call it.
70
It was
hours.
great, Yeah.
It was like the
That's
only
great to hear.
70-degree day we had in November over there.
Yeah.
But it was fantastic. And we've done 2 more projects just like that. We've back in 2021, in 2022, we installed a second container in Harlem with a community group called Harlem Grown. This container, it was going up and down because of some slight issues on the construction side there. But regardless, they were still able to grow 800 pounds of produce. And that was just for roughly about 40 hours worth of pretty much labor hours throughout this whole entire duration that they've had the container. So it's clear to us that these containers can be a viable asset to addressing things like food insecurity in these communities that are at high risk and high need. The last one that we just installed this previous November was with Buffalo Go Green. We're super excited to be working with Buffalo Go Green, specifically really looking forward to working with Allison Mahoney. She is the CEO and founder of Buffalo Go Green. She's been a pioneer in this space for the past 20 years or so. So we're really looking forward to bring a whole lot of really great programming for that general community, whether it's on the adult side, on the youth side, to pretty much just teach them about the careers that they could be exposed to when working in this type of industry. You know, different nutritional facts and just overall great community benefits that are associated with this project. So looking into.
And it's located blocks from the 514, you know, shooting.
Correct.
In the heart of the east side in a very underserved neighborhood. So incredibly, you know, high impact initiative. And I thank and applaud you for that.
Thank you. Yep, it's right on the corner of Zinner Street and Ferry Street over there.
Yep.
So yeah, thank you for that. Absolutely.
Yep, Allison's defines what you want and someone who brings the passion every day to serve that community.
Yeah, we're stoked to be finally working with her, and we're definitely, we will keep you updated as more things come progress with her. So finally, looking into 2024 and 2025, we're going to be implementing controlled environmental agricultural curriculums with high school students. It's pretty much a fancy word to kind of talk about everything I've been going over today. So it's a curriculum that'll be more of a elective program that high school students can opt into with the network of high schools that we have through our Green Classroom program. It'll teach them about technical skills associated with this field, different environmental studies and environmental type of careers that are associated with this field, workforce training opportunities for them to get that hands-on experience and then go put that on a resume and actually get a job associated in this field. So we're very much looking forward to that opportunity. And totally forgot to point out some of the photos that are on the bottom here, but towards the bottom left here, you'll see we actually just did a ribbon cutting for a lab that we installed in the South Bronx. This is PS 25, which is the bilingual school. For those that may not know, this is actually the first Spanish-English public school in New York City, and they're still keeping very true to what their roots, and the majority of their teachers speak predominantly Spanish and are bilingual as well, and servicing that greater community. The photo on the right is actually pretty much a snapshot of what it looks like inside one of these containers. I wanted to put the photo of the bright lights, but Kyla thought it looked like a rave inside, but kind of we left it just a little more plain with some vegetables growing here. But I mean, these container farms, like I said before, have a great potential to be really not only for us on the utility side, taking all the data that's necessary to see if it makes sense for the utility of the future, but it has great community impacts as well. What I'd like to show on the next slide is actually a video that we did of the install that we took at Zinner Street with Buffalo Go Green. In our Environmental Justice Department here at the Power Authority. Today we installed in our Environmental Justice Department here at the Power Authority. Today we installed this shipping container. It's a retrofitted shipping container to grow produce hydroponically year-round. This container has the capacity to grow over 13,000 different leafy greens, vegetables, produce, herbs, you name it. And we're also going to be tracking things like water consumption, electricity consumption, as well as how much of a yield we can get from growing hydroponically indoors year-round with this type of container. This is the third container we installed to date with the New York Power Authority. This is our second one in Buffalo. This is the first one that we've done on Buffalo's east side. We're here on Zinner Street in Buffalo's east side community. Beautiful container. Very happy we're able to do this. Thank you to all of our partners.
She had a small little hydroponic greenhouse, their little facility that she used. So this is just a huge step up, and it's great to see.
Oh, absolutely. And the space itself is fantastic too.
Yeah.
So we're excited to be part of that opportunity.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to end by thanking all the different partners, internal partners as well. Almost every project and program that we do has partnerships. The last one was John Canal, a partnership with John Canal's team. They paid for the container. Then we also, I heard a lot of presentations, and so you're on our radar to bring. We had Larry and Valerie come out with us to Uprose to help them with community preparedness. So we're always open to ideas, always open for you to participate in our events. And thank you for authorizing the extra resource. I think Matt and Alex can actually take a break, and their teams can take a break. So we really thank you for that opportunity to expand our staff to have more of a regional presence. So,
Well, thank you for the great work all three of you and your team is doing. We take pride in the EJ initiatives and, more importantly, the outcomes that you're delivering and the impacts you're having. So thank you very, very much, and a great upbeat way to end our formal presentations today. So thank you all for hanging in there and being effective closers for us. Okay, well done.
Not today, but I'd love to hear the feedback. I'd love to hear what the kids are saying, what the communities are saying, because it looks awesome. And I'm guessing that they feel the same way.
Yeah, please
I know you
reach
don't
out,
have time
follow up
today,
with
but
us, we'll
please
give her,
let us- yeah.
catch her
I
up.
think everybody want to hear.
Yep.
it. So feel free to share what you're hearing back, and yeah, so we can keep that momentum going forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, Dennis, anything you want to add before we jump to committee reports? You've dutifully been, paying attention. I appreciate that.
No, John, you're doing a great job. We appreciate how you're pushing this along.
All right, okay. I know, there's sunshine out there.
There is.
All right, I've got a couple of committee reports. A couple of weeks ago, we had Finance Committee meeting. That was edge of the seat material, as always. Talk about razzle dazzle. We were bringing it then. We have a half dozen proposals that came out of that were recommended by all of us, for all of us to approve. A quick recap of that. First was a $70 million appropriation for 15 5-year project and program management services value contracts, one of our traditional aggregate awards to be parceled out over the course of the next 5 years. We had a couple contract authorization increases in connection with Smart Path Connect, one for $23.5 million to Michael's Power, one for $30.5 million to Michael's Power, both under the Smart Path Connect umbrella. We affirmed the CBA agreement between New York State Canals and the Civil Service Employees Association, as well as other union locals and negotiating units. We recommended 10 million additional funding for Canals on Demand infrastructure. And we recommended an approval of expenditure up to 50 million in connection with Propel New York through 2025. Hopefully that's enough of a refresher. Unless there's any questions, I'd ask for a motion to recommend.
Number 9, Governance Committee, Special Governance.
We're coming
Committee.
to that next. We're still in finance. Come
Oh,
on,
okay.
stick with me here. All right?
I have to go to
I know
the
you're
bathroom.
excited and anxious. We're coming to you next.
I need to go take a bio break. so
Oh, okay, well, we're going real
Okay.
fast then. So we just made a motion to recommend Laura in a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried, which gets us to, we had a very important, brief but very important governance committee meeting this morning, ably chaired by Ms. Gonzalez. B.
Thank you. So this morning, I have to read this, I forgot. My mind's not elsewhere. Governance Committee, we approved the appointment of Executive Vice President and General Counsel, Miss Lori Alesso. Congratulations, and no more interim. And also the appointment of Chair and Risk Committee, Trustee Morris. No.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
Morris.
correct.
Yeah, that's me. So thank you. That was our Special Governance Committee.
Do we need, I think we need a motion to approve
So may I have a
both of
motion,
those.
please? So moved.
All right, Cecily probably shouldn't approve motion
shouldn't.
herself.
I'll withdraw my motion. I'll withdraw my motion.
Lori and Lewis, Karen, you got that documented? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Of course not. Motion carried. B, you're adjourned.
Thank you.
The remaining items fall under our consent agenda. Hopefully everyone had some time to take a look through those materials. As always, if you have any questions, the team is here to respond. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Michael, a move second. Thanks, Lewis. Again, no questions. Otherwise, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carried. And that brings our meeting to a close. As always, I thank everyone for their time and attention. Kudos and cheers, Lori, for your formal appointment. Karina as well, earlier noted. And Cecily, thank you for stepping up and stepping in to work with Alexis and her team to steer our risk and resilience efforts in the year ahead. Thank you, one and all, for attending today. Our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, March 26th. So you can look forward to more razzle dazzle at that point in time. With that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion. Michael, thank you. Lewis, Lori, shared seconds. All in favor? Aye. And B votes aye as well. Motion carried. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy the Super Bowl. and the nice sunshine of Warren. Dennis, thanks a million for hanging in and hanging on. Enjoy your time away. We'll talk to you soon.